I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is 5:30. Item 2, open session, a Level 4 FNG parent-student grievance. This grievance will be heard in open session at the request of the grievant. This grievance has been remanded to the board by the Commissioner of Education to be heard on the merits of the complaint raised by the grievant. This is a stop, look, and listen proceeding. The board will listen impartially to a presentation by the grievant and the administration. Both the grievant and the administration were given the opportunity to submit documents they wish to have the board review prior to this hearing. The grievant will have 20 minutes to address the board. District administration will then have 20 minutes to address the board. Board members only will have the opportunity to ask questions of the grievant and of staff members. Following questions by the board, the grievant will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. The administration will have the same. Since this grievance is being held in open session, we ask that no students' names be used during the presentation, and we also ask that any references to employees refer to the person's title rather than his or her name. As this is a grievance proceeding, all those present shall conduct themselves in a professional manner, and no disruptions by anyone in attendance will be tolerated. I understand that the administration will be represented by Mr. Jason Piricello.
Yes, ma'am.
Will the staff members in the room that are here to respond to questions from the board regarding this matter please state your name and position?
Jennifer Aguilar, Director of PE and Health for Northeast.
Katie Steinhoff, Health Instructional Specialist, K-12.
Thank you.
Question, they are not part of the grievance which was filed 2.5 years ago. They were in their current positions until recently, so I'm just questioning the purpose of having witnesses who aren't familiar with
If we have
operations.
questions regarding the grievance, that's who the administration has put for.
So they're privy to the grievance, even though it was filed 2.5 years ago. Is that correct? So any staff can see the grievance?
They have been apprised of the grievance. Is that correct, Mr. Piricello?
Yeah, they haven't been provided a copy of the grievance. They understand what the grievance is about.
Okay.
But they do need to be present to answer questions possibly about the current state of affairs and the current curriculum. So they are relevant. And they're not exactly witnesses. They're more staff members who are here to provide information as necessary. But they didn't witness any of the events from 2016.
Okay.
Thank you.
The grievant may begin when you are ready. We can give you a 2-minute warning.
Okay. I have several. I thought the order of events was going to be some introductions. Was that what that was? Introductions? No.
Yes?
Okay. So I have several objections before we begin. First, I do want to clarify it's not a parent-student grievance. It is a parent grievance, but your form requires the student's name. So I would hope that no FERPA or a PPRA or any federal, state, or other constitutional laws are violated by involving a child in this grievance, which has nothing to do with the child. Secondly, recusals. Are there any board members who wish to recuse themselves if you have been directly involved party to the complaints that were raised? No? Okay. Also, I would request that my microphone not be cut because it would make an incorrect hearing transcript. If I have an objection or if I have something to say, this should not be silenced at any time. Is that agreeable to the board?
We don't cut mics.
I believe that's incorrect. But okay, that would be good this time. I also object to the new evidence placed in the local record. Only items 1, 7, and 8 are pertinent to this grievance. That is all that was in levels 1, 2, and 3, and it is against the F&G policy, very clearly stated. In fact, I have these to pass out for you to keep it easy to follow along. I don't know how to get them to you. But the F&G policy is extremely clear that no new evidence may be added at level 4. Additionally, the commissioner stated that at level 4, no new evidence may be presented. This policy is not ambiguous.
I have a question, but I would like to consult with Mr. Lopez. Could I consult with you for just a moment?
Sure.
And then Ms. Hilliard, I'll address that.
Would it be okay to pass these out to you or have someone? I don't know where she is. Is that new evidence?
So, first of all, I'd like to ask where Mr. Hilliard is.
When you begin my time, I will begin my comments on that. As soon as
So
we're ready
you-
to get started.
Again, 2 minutes ago.
Oh, well,
No, it hadn't.
Okay, all right. Well,
I'm sorry.
thank you.
No, I hadn't done that yet.
Okay,
I was still going through this.
okay.
So Mr. Hilliard was afforded 2 different opportunities to provide any documents that he wanted included in this grievance. And as I had explained, the initial grievance was denied due to timeliness. So when the commissioner remanded it back to the board to be heard on the merits, it became a brand-new hearing. So that is why there are new documents or new information that was presented or will be presented.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I'm also aware that he told you that that would be a violation of his constitutional rights because there was no due process leading up to the addition of new evidence. And just to say that he could add some too doesn't make that right. There is a risk of violating someone's rights under color of law, and I think that's just, we don't want to deprive anybody of their rights.
Well, we could have remanded it back to level 1 and then gone through all the steps again, and we decided to just start it at this level.
Okay, so your contention is that no merits were heard. I just want to make sure that's on the record. Okay. Additionally, will you be willing to change the order of the hearing since there is new evidence that's going
No.
to be permitted? And will you be providing any opportunity to rebut the new evidence after it's presented?
You have 20 minutes to present your grievance, then the administration has 20 minutes, and then board members can ask questions, and then you have 2 minutes for a closing statement, and administration has 2 minutes for a
Okay,
closing
so
statement.
everyone on the board would agree with that. Is that correct? Okay. So I am Mrs. H. I am the representative.
Okay, your
Oh,
time starts now.
Thank you, thank you. I am the representative for the grievant who wanted to be the one presenting, but for good reason requested that I present. Who is the grievant? These are my words. He is a good man. He is a dad who is brave and selfless and who's had the courage and stamina to stand on the wall despite great personal cost and risk. The family is the foundational building block of society. State law reflects this, requiring boards and educators to partner fully with parents, and these concepts are central to this grievance. Now, I turn to the merits. I have provided you packets because the electronic thing you got was so extensive, I wanted you to be able to easily follow along with what we're talking about. First, I need to say, though, that when I refer to shack leaders in anything I say, it is the former ones. It is not the current ones. That needs to just be very clear. The grievant asked for an investigation into the shack and the anti-parent strategy permeating its operations and matters surrounding this curriculum that we're talking about today. This investigation he requested should be from an external investigator and would likely cost 50-fold times less than the legal fees spent on this grievance. At some point, you have to recognize that wasting taxpayer dollars to refuse to look into things is not wise on behalf of the voters or your residents that you represent. So Texas Education Code, Section 28.004A, explains that the entire purpose of a shack is to help ensure that the community's values are reflected in health curriculum. What happens when you hide? What happens on the shack? Who gets on the shack? How they got on the shack? We deserve transparency and truth about this. Several years ago, some totally unjustifiable things happened. The shack was closed by the PE and health director. The shack was, the members were forced to sign non-disclosure agreements, and the shack was, the PE health director just threw out the board-approved bylaws. Not one of these things came to the board, and 2 of you were on the shack. 2 of you controlled the agenda items for the board, and nobody took action. You didn't ask to have any of that placed on the agenda. But it is not a staff committee, it is a board advisory council. It has a completely different weight to it, and it is required by law. Why would a board diminish its own authority by handing off a crucial board level responsibility? Next slide. In the local record, of course, you'll see reference to a webinar hosted by a former NEISD PE health instructional specialist. This individual went around and taught other school districts in Texas how to get radical sex education into schools past their communities and conservative family values. And this was achieved by manipulating the shack and garnering favor with district and staff, district leadership and staff. By conservative values, I wondered if they meant getting it past parents and grandparents who wanted the law followed so that 12-year-olds would not be sexualized. This individual essentially explains that what you have to do, what she's teaching the other school districts, is just have the right parents on the shack, ones who will directly oppose any other parent who has an issue with the curriculum. Then all complaints will face a set strategy to oppose them. This individual ensured that the administration, all the way to the very top, would protect the objectives of those shack staff leaders. In this webinar before you, there's one excerpt on the screen, is a milder version of many other things that have been discovered since then, which the grievant could have put into the record. Please note that he did not. Parents should not be misled, especially about something like their own children talking about sex outside their present with other adults. So the parent information on the curriculum has to be correct. It wasn't. This is what it looked like for 6th grade. It was a totally empty page. After the grievance filing, it does appear that the PE health department has started to fix some of the information, and it has largely improved. So kudos to all those changes, although no one bothered to inform the grievant. Parents still don't recognize, however, that the curriculum is not abstinence, but it teaches that their children can choose to draw the line at whatever sexual activity they are comfortable with right now. The only standard is an adolescent's feelings. And we as parents know how quickly feelings of adolescence can change at that age. The district has inserted new evidence into this local record, which is unfair, but it is also irrelevant. One of those irrelevant details has to do with the opt-in rates. This is not about popularity or who likes something. It's about curriculum compliance with the law. That's it. I don't like speed limits, but I don't care. I follow them. It's not about whether you like or dislike something. So we have to keep in mind this is about legal compliance. And just FYI, the abstinence-only program before it had a 98% popularity rate. Now we turn to compliance with Texas Education Code. This is the primary reason we're here. On the screen, you see some of the requirements for any sexuality education that is adopted by a board. It has to fulfill all these things. We know that the word must or shall in the law means you have to do it, and we know right there at the bottom after 4 where it says and, that means it's not, you don't pick 1 or 2 or number 4 or number 5. You have to do all 5. So this is an absolute requirement. If you find one of these things is not met, you have to immediately stop teaching the curriculum. So let's look at these 5 conditions. Let's see if any one thing is missing. Subsection 4 says that the curriculum must direct adolescents to a standard of behavior in which abstinence from sexual activity before marriage is the most effective way to prevent a number of consequences. So where can we find this concept taught? Nowhere. This is not in the curriculum. There is no direction to anything solid, only to a line that an adolescent can draw for him or herself based on their feelings. Remember, it is draw the line where you feel comfortable at this moment in your life. Do the sexual activities that you feel comfortable with. There is no standard of behavior. There's definitely no directing to it. And then there is 0 reference to marriage at all. So you can't be saying that you fulfill this if you are not pointing to the idea that it is that it is the best thing to do before marriage. If you do a search of the student workbook for 8th grade, which is where the sex, STD, mostly HIV, is taught, you do a search. There is 0 results for marriage or married. You can look at the teacher manual. And with married, you get two references, but it's open-ended questions, or it's things that the teacher does not direct or even say necessarily. One of them is a game, and that's a possible answer a student might come up with. This is not directing anything. And there's your example of that. If you want to find it, it's a 2.4 activity. Okay, so right there, that number 4, that is not met by code. But if there's some people who want to have a little bit more information, let's keep going. Let's look at number 3. It says, you must emphasize, not mention, emphasize that abstinence from sexual activity, if used consistently and correctly, is the only method that is 100% effective in preventing a number of consequences, including the emotional trauma associated with adolescent sexual activity. This one I want everyone in this room to pay attention to, because we talk a good game about caring about mental health, about suicide risk, about career and relationships. But nowhere are kids is it emphasized that adolescent sexual activities can lead to emotional trauma, which lead to everything we listed. Suicide risk increases, mental health goes down, relationships suffer, and future education goes down. So we are not even teaching the trauma that goes along with adolescent sexual activity. Here's some of the effects. This is science. We don't want to be anti-science. So if the district does care about this, this is something kids need to know, and this current curriculum does not comply with the law. If we need still more, let's look at number 2. You must devote more attention to abstinence from sexual activity than to any other behavior. Now, to be fair, the district will say, and the grievant agrees, it does not have to be each single lesson. It has to be in totality that this standard is met, that you're devoting more attention to it than anything else. We agree, he agrees, but defining abstinence in the teacher book towards the very end is not giving it more attention. In fact, let me show you how little attention abstinence, or as this book calls it, do not have sex or not having sex. In 8th grade, which is where the sex is primarily taught, you hear condoms 81 times, STDs 162, HIV 342 times, sex as an equal option to not having sex 14 times. It's not emphasized and more attention to, it's on par with your other choice to do have sex. And then only twice is it said that you should not have sex. You can't be meeting that we are not meeting that standard. It is not more attention devoted to it. And even here at the very end, you have abstinence. Only one of 10 other options, 9 of which are birth control. I should say 8. As rebuttal, in anticipation of what the district will present based on evidence put into the local record as new evidence, the TEA complaint closure letter from 2018 does not prove the curriculum was reviewed for legal compliance. In fact, it wasn't even considered for that. The person in the room is in the room here who filed that complaint. This rebuttal that I'm giving now needs to point out that this email here says that although the TEA requested information from the school district, there has not been an investigation authorized. There was no looking into the curriculum. Instead, there was something called an abuse of discretion review. Does anybody know what that means? The complaint at the TEA level was limited to, this is per the board's attorney, an abuse of discretion review. That means they didn't look at the curriculum, they just looked at jurisdictional reasons. Did they have the authority to decide this? And they decided in that case, given the specific issues of the complaint that were raised, they did not. They did not look at the curriculum, therefore you cannot be telling parents that the TEA did and didn't find a problem with it. That is not telling parents the truth. Now, there's still going to be people who, have good hearts that really want to say, well, the kids need this. We really like this curriculum. How dare you come in here? We worked really hard to pick that curriculum, and we're going to sit here and defend it. So let's talk about that. First of all, I want to say political agendas do not belong in education. And anybody who has so much anger and emotion that you want to defend this curriculum without listening to a parent, you need to check what your priorities, and that's me speaking, not the grievant. So if you like this program, why don't you explain to me why you picked a program that does not help girls? The people who wrote this research, wrote the curriculum, did the research. It doesn't help girls. Furthermore, we need to teach them condoms, right? Right? Okay, guess what? The condom data was so bad, they threw it out. The effects were not there, so they threw it out. That's pretty rare in research. They usually have to report at least some raw data of how bad something is. So I would like to see that real research, the real data. Furthermore, Well, what's another excuse? Oh, well, parents don't care enough about their kids to teach these things. Guess what? These parents from California did care. They cared so much, they were so offended by this program that they pulled their kids out, so much so that the researchers had to make up data. You know who pulled their kids out more than anybody? Minorities. So they made up data. They used this technique called interpolation. No, excuse me, not interpolation, rich imputation. So they had to fabricate the data to make it up for minorities. So we're not helping girls. Who knows what we're doing to minorities? Condom use doesn't even work. Okay, well, what about STDs and pregnancy? Because on the front of these books, it says it teaches those. It says it's for those things that we have this curriculum, right? No, they didn't even measure it. If you look across here, it's kind of small. Hopefully your packets will be more readable. You can see that it looked at sexual initiation. Was that effective? Maybe a little bit for boys, not girls. Everything else was ineffective, and the two things that were not measured are the things that this was sold at to the board saying it's going to prevent STDs and pregnancy rates. Didn't even measure it. Could you tell me how much time I have, please?
6.57.
Thank you. So, all of this was known and knowable. When this was presented to the board in 2016, the PE health director held this very research that I'm just discussing in her hand and did not reveal it to the board. Sat there and said that this is a new curriculum to replace an old one. They were the same age. The board was not told that. This is a long, what I'm concerned about is the need to investigate, and the grievant believes that parents are not being heard and are not being supported. They're not being told the full truth. And the way that the shack was allowed to operate for so long by shutting it up, shutting it down, shutting out parents, making it hard to see the curriculum, and writing previews in very cleverly worded phrasing is still a problem. We need to investigate externally, external investigator, and parents need to really be able to come together and demand respect. It doesn't matter what our views are. It doesn't matter what our politics are. There are children, and we deserve to be told the truth, and we deserve people that will understand that it's important to follow the law. The grievant and I, at level 2, spent 45 minutes with the hearing officer going over the merits. So part of the objection is that the merits have been heard, unlike the argument being made. What I could not have imagined, however, is when we got the audio for this, was the level of what educators think about us, what they think about, not me, but what they think about parents, and how misinformed they were about this curriculum and how quick they were to judge. I heard talking point upon talking point, such talking points as, oh, conservative, or they just disagree with the curriculum. You have to opt in and that kind of thing. And I've heard that over and over throughout. Well, let's get my thing here going. So when that was finished, you need to be clear that nobody attended a parent preview. Nobody attended a parent preview. Nobody opted anyone in. The only parent preview, it wasn't even a preview, it was a parent research who's also in this room who found out the truth of this curriculum. And that is what initiated this whole grievance. But it was not a school-based parent preview put on by PE Health. Nobody opted anybody in, and it was not about if anybody liked the curriculum. The entire thing was about if it's legal. After we left, this is what we heard.
You're safe. They're fine.
He's nice, right?
Yeah, they both are.
I like him.
Both are very, very conservative, you can tell.
Oh my God. Very.
Yeah. But very nice.
I hope their daughter is the white wedding dress kind of girl they want her to be.
So, they were fine.
Did they go to the parent preview? Did they go to the parent preview meeting?
The mom did.
And she must not have previewed very carefully.
She didn't agree with it, and she talked to him within a day about what she saw.
So why did they opt their kid in? You have to opt the kid in.
Yeah. You know, I don't know. I didn't ask.
It's not opting out. Why,
Yeah.
if you don't approve, did you opt your kid in?
Yeah, I didn't ask that.
I'm like, I thought my attitude towards that might be a little, like, what the heck?
Yeah.
You don't even have to opt them out. You have to opt them in.
When was it shown, you know, or when was it taught?
I don't know.
I don't either.
I think, I don't know, maybe within the time period.
Yeah.
He acts like it is. I would have to get with Eric on that.
You know, I have mixed feelings about it. Only in that I don't agree with the content either, but
It's a little involved, I will say, but you know what? There's a lot of kids out there doing a lot of stuff.
better than a lot.
And you know what? We better get them prepared,
Yeah.
because do you really want them not knowing and then being taken advantage of? Like, I don't know.
You have
I
2
feel
minutes.
like information is power. You
Well,
can
and I asked
your,
them, you know, you were denied at level 1 because it was not timely. Why are we here?
And what they say. We don't agree
They
that
don't
that
know.
was, right. Sorry. They wanted to be.
Well, you heard enough. Hope their daughter's of the white wedding dress variety because we won't love her. Is that what it is? Is that what the educators here think of us, parents? That we have to teach them because these parents won't teach them? That's the disdain. That's a cultural thing. And that's got to change. All the protection of the shack, the treatment of the parents, the treatment of this grievant, making him suffer and go through with this for 2.5 years because nobody wanted to spend. How long did it take to disprove the curriculum? 2 minutes? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Are you ready, Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Stewart?
Can I just have a 1-minute warning before the end? Yes, thank you. Okay, good evening, Madam President and trustees. I do want to make 2 things clear at the outset. First, and I'll get into this more later, but remember that we're talking about a fully optional curriculum here tonight. And it's a fully optional course of instruction for middle school students. Second, administration is not advocating for or against the content of this particular curriculum. That's ultimately going to be a community-driven decision by the shack. And you know, Mr. Hilliard in this case is claiming that this curriculum violates the law, though, so we have to address that claim. Now, the recording that was just played, that was unfortunate. That was a recording of 2 people talking and that weren't aware that they were being recorded at the time. However, it's not relevant to the central question of this grievance, which is whether this curriculum is legal or not. And we maintain that it is legal. And I should also add a third thing, that we are one of 8 school districts currently that are teaching this curriculum in Bexar County that we know of. There may be more, but that's the number that we were able to gather prior to this grievance. 7 other school districts teach this as well. So, looking at its first request for this board to halt, draw the line immediately, and reinstate the previous in the interim, that remedy obviously has not been granted, but the board has already provided a vehicle for potential relief on this item. So on January 10th, this board approved a resolution requesting that the shack review the human sexuality and abstinence education curriculum. So the shack will look at the curriculum and they'll come back to you with a recommendation as to whether to keep the curriculum or to replace it with something else. Now, as stated in Education Code 28.004A, all school boards are required to establish a shack to, quote, assist the district in ensuring that local community values are reflected in the district's health education instruction. The shack's review is a community review. And the Education Code states that any course materials or instruction relating to human sexuality shall be selected by the Board of Trustees with the advice of the local shack, and you know that. Now, the law states the SHAC must have at least 5 members. Here in NEISD, we have 50 members on our SHAC. And right now, the makeup is 27 parents, 27 parents, 17 employees, 4 community members, and 2 non-voting trustees. So what Mr. Hilliard, through his wife, and I'm going to say Mr. Hilliard because it's his grievance primarily, is requesting that this board halt the Draw the Line curriculum tonight and replace it with the prior curriculum. And he's doing that without the advice of the local SHAC, with the current SHAC, without ensuring that local community values are taken into consideration. The prior curriculum was called Choosing the Best, and that was adopted in 2008, 14 years ago. He's asking you to roll back to that curriculum. Now, Draw the Line was adopted on May 9th of 2016. And during the May 2016 board meeting, which is publicly available to view on YouTube, it was stated that the Choosing the Best curriculum does teach human sexuality and STD prevention to 6th graders. And that's not something that Draw the Line does. I'm not sure if he's aware of that aspect of the curriculum or any part of the curriculum. I don't know if he's compared it with our current curriculum to determine if that's a better or worse curriculum. But Draw the Line, again, our current curriculum doesn't start human sexuality instruction until 7th grade. So to comply with Mr. Hilliard's request to revert back to Choosing the Best curriculum without the current SHAC's input would ignore our current community's values and would likely violate the law. This board has already requested the SHAC's advice on the matter, and it can take appropriate action on the curriculum once the SHAC has reviewed and made its recommendation. Now, this review may take some time, but it's important that we take the community's values into consideration and properly vet this through the SHAC before the board decides to replace the curriculum. Now, Mr. Hilliard asked this board to replace the Draw the Line curriculum based primarily on his claim that the curriculum violates state law. We've already received an opinion from the Texas Education Agency on that claim. In 2018, a parent alleged through a 7-page complaint to the TEA primarily that the curriculum violated state law. She also provided 61 pages of her own analysis and documentation in support of her position. TEA came back to us as a district and requested a response from the district specifically regarding the parent's allegations about, quote, the district's health instruction not complying with its requirements. And that's on page 229 of your packet. Now, the district then provided an 11-page responsive letter with analysis describing why the curriculum did not violate state law. It also provided hundreds of pages of documentation to TEA. The district also pointed out to TEA at that time that the TEA itself had commissioned a review panel that had identified Draw the Line as a recommended curriculum for HIV and STD prevention in Texas. So if Draw the Line violates state law, why would the Texas Education Agency's review panel recommend it? That makes no sense. So after NEISD provided its response and the supporting documentation, TEA then wrote back to the district on June 12, 2018. They stated, quote, the agency has reviewed the documentation and determined that Northeast Independent School District has addressed the reported concerns that are within the scope of the Texas Education Agency. This concludes the agency's review of the matter, and no further action or information is necessary at this time. So it's clear then that TEA, after reviewing all the documentation and the analysis provided by both parties, did not make a finding that the curriculum was illegal. It's been stated here tonight that because they didn't go into a further investigation, they didn't look at it. That's not what their letter said to us. Their letter said that they had reviewed all the documentation provided by both parties. If they didn't feel like they had to go further and investigate further, that's one thing, because they got the answer they needed from what both parties provided. It was also reasonable for the district to conclude based on that letter and based on the TEA's own recommendation for that curriculum for STD and AIDS prevention that TEA felt Draw the Line met the Education Code's requirements. That was a fair assumption on our part. But at the very least, we know that TEA decided the curriculum was not worthy of further consideration. And so although the matter has been reviewed by TEA and the allegation has been thoroughly addressed in the past, I'll once again respond to the claim that the Draw the Line curriculum violates state law. First, we'll talk about the notice requirements of the law. The law states that before each school year, the district shall provide a written notice to a parent of each student enrolled in the district that includes, number one, quote, a statement informing the parent of the human sexuality instruction requirements under state law. 2, a detailed description of the content of the district's human sexuality instruction and a general schedule on which the instruction will be provided. So each year, and this is in your packet, the district provides every parent with a 4-page notice informing them of the human sexuality requirements under state law, as well as all the other information required by law. The notice provides a description of the topics to be covered across grade levels, along with general timeframes during the year when the instruction will be provided. NEISD also provides parent preview meetings about a month before the instruction taking place so that parents can come in and see and hear about it in person. And that's on page 249. The notice also has to include a statement of the parent's right to, quote, at the parent's discretion, review or purchase a copy of the curriculum materials, and remove the student from any part of the district's human sexuality instruction without subjecting the student to any disciplinary action, etc. So all district parents are given a link through Skyward Family Access where they can see a detailed summary of the Draw the Line curriculum. And they're also told that they can view the full curriculum on a district campus or building. They're also given electronic access to be able to sign up for 30 days access to the full curriculum. So they can see it electronically, they can see it physically, they can see it every different way. So I'm not sure how much more transparent we can be there. All district parents are also told that the human sexuality instruction is fully optional. All parents whose students are scheduled to receive the instruction are sent a separate permission form about 3 weeks before it happening. The law formerly required parents to opt out of instruction, which meant that students defaulted to receiving the instruction if no permission form was returned. This changed to an opt-in requirement in the last legislative session. However, the district has been requiring opt-in for years, back to 2016 and prior. We've, for the past, however many years at least, we have required parents to affirmatively give written permission for their students to receive the instruction, and that's still the case now. If a parent doesn't provide the written authorization, then the student will not receive the instruction. They'll be put into a separate activity. So during the 2019-20 school year, which is the last year we have full data on this, 82.7% of 7th and 8th grade parents affirmatively gave permission for their students to receive the instruction. 10.5% of parents said no. They returned a permission slip that said no, and 6.4% of parents didn't return permission forms. So some of those may have said no, some of those may have just not returned it. We're not sure. And about half of 1% of students withdrew from school prior to returning the permission forms. So there was no human sexuality instruction last year due to COVID, and the data is not available yet for this school year. So while we understand and we respect that Draw the Line or any human sexuality instruction may not be desired by all parents for their students, parents certainly have the option and the legal right to have their students placed into their activities while that instruction is taking place. They can also choose to have their kids go to some lessons but not others, as shown on the permission slip that's in the packet at page 248, so they can tell them they want the instruction but check off that they don't want certain lessons. So regarding the content of the curriculum itself, the Education Code states that any course, materials, and instruction must, and we saw those on the slide up there, but there's 5 things. I'll cover 4 right now. So number 1, present abstinence from sexual activity as a preferred choice of behavior to all sexual activity for unmarried persons of school age. 2, devote more attention to abstinence from sexual activity than any other behavior. 3, emphasize that abstinence from sexual activity, if used consistently and correctly, is the only method that's 100% effective in preventing pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, etc. And 4, direct adolescents to a standard of behavior in which abstinence from sexual activity before marriage is the most effective way to prevent pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, etc. So if you read this curriculum front to back, like I have, and I'm sure most of you have, or if not all of you, the vast majority of that curriculum is dedicated to giving students the tools to avoid situations that could lead to sexual activity. It's like refusal skills. And each and every time the curriculum covers topics such as avoiding risky situations, getting out of difficult situations, identifying warning signs, drawing their line, they are giving the kids the tools to get out of situations that could lead to sexual activity. So it's not just telling them, don't have sex, it's telling them, don't have sex, and here's how to get out of it, okay? Let's walk through some scenarios and what can we do to get out of this situation? So I don't have enough time to list every time the curriculum emphasizes, encourages, or teaches students how to abstain from sexual activity, but I'll review as many as I can within about the next 4 minutes. So we look at Roman numeral 8 and the 7th and 8th grade lesson plans. Underlying principles: not having sexual intercourse is the healthiest sexual limit for students in middle school. Avoiding sexual intercourse and the situations that might lead to it in middle school and beyond protects students from STD and pregnancy, as well as from social, emotional, and health consequences of early intercourse. look at page 37 of the 7th grade lesson plan. Activity 2.3 associates key terms such as sad, embarrassed, worried, and afraid with having sex in a certain situation, while terms such as proud, glad, happy, not worried, and still friends are associated with not having sex. Page 43, purpose statement for students. Today we'll learn how to recognize warning signs that a situation could lead to unplanned sex and make plans to get out of this kind of situation. Page 47, purpose, to allow students to identify warning signs that a situation could lead to sex. Procedure, number 2, ask students if they can think of some of the warning signs in that story. No parents home, house dark, alcohol, that could have signaled Tina and Marco to get out of the situation and not cross their line. So there's a good example. There was a scenario within the lesson where Tina and Marco go to a party. Both of them, in their own minds, are not ready to have sex. They don't want to cross that line, but they get to this party. There's alcohol there. They have their friends are, egging them on, and they end up having sex. And then the next day, they regret it. And so they have the kids go through this exercise where they're looking at all the warning signs where they could have gotten out of it. So there's one example. So page 50, lesson plan, activity 3.4. Purpose, to practice problem-solving ways out of situations that might lead to sex. Procedure number 1, explain that students will now work in small groups to think of ways that Tina and Marco could listen to the warning signs and get out of the situation. So there's that. Page 63, purpose statement. Today we'll review how to draw the line when you're pressured in a sexual situation. Page 65, lesson 4. Explain that today students will be reviewing steps for drawing the line and will practice applying these steps in situations where they might need to draw the line to avoid having sex. Page 70, explain that you will demonstrate ways to use the steps for drawing the line in a pressure situation. Page 72, student role plays, purpose, to enable students to practice resisting pressure in situations that could lead to sex. Pages 76, steps for drawing the line. Say no, I don't. Use a body that says no. Use a body that says no. Change the subject. Walk away if you need to. All about saying no to sex. Page 87, lesson 5, STD facts, objectives. Students will be able to define STD and common signs of an STD, describe when and how to get help for STD infection, identify abstinence as the best way to prevent STD infection. Page 96, quiz review. What can someone do to prevent an STD? Answer, the best way to prevent an STD is to choose not to have sex. Page 105, objectives. Students will be able to describe interpersonal skills that will help them draw their lines to delay sex, give advice to friends on how to draw the line to delay sex. Page 111, student role plays, purpose, to allow students to think of how they might help a friend resist sexual pressure and to practice assisting a friend. Page 115, teacher activity. The best way to make sure you don't get an STD is to not have sex. Page 29 of the student workbook. The best way to prevent STD is not to have sex. The nurse tells her this is also the best way to prevent unplanned pregnancy. Page 33 of the 8th grade lesson plan. Students will be able to identify abstinence as the best way to prevent HIV and other STD. Page 44, ask students to name the best ways to prevent HIV and other STD. Emphasize that choosing not to have sex is the best and safest way to prevent HIV and other STD. Remind students that not having sex prevents pregnancy too. I think I'm just about there. How much time do I have, Mrs. Huey?
4:40.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on. I have pages and pages and pages. There's no way I could get through them. But, so when you look at the Draw the Line curriculum, when you read it through, just as I have, and it's not that long, parents can this is a couple of hours to get through, really, if you want to read both grade levels. But it undoubtedly presents abstinence as the preferred behavior and the best and only behavior that's 100% effective against pregnancy, STD, HIV, and AIDS. It also stresses abstinence from sexual activity more than any other behavior. There's no question about it. Now, the 5th content requirement of the law states that the course materials must teach contraception and condom use in terms of human use reality rates instead of theoretical laboratory rates. Now, in the teacher lesson plan, it does have the theoretical laboratory rates. However, UT Health at the outset looked at that, and they provided us a medical supplement, which is included on the Skyward page for the parents, and it's also provided to the instructors, and it has the actual human use reality rates. So we're in compliance with that as well. So overall, the NAICD Human Sexuality and Abstinence Education Program meets or exceeds all legal requirements, including but not limited to notification, opt-in, abstinence, and contraception teaching requirements. We as a district have reviewed the content against the law multiple times, and we've come to the same conclusion. TEA has also concluded that no further action is necessary regarding this curriculum, and we're confident that the Draw the Line curriculum would survive any legal challenge. Now, aside from his own legal challenge, Mr. Hilliard claims that the Draw the Line curriculum contains offensive content that does not reflect community values. Again, the curriculum was approved in 2016 by the SHAC, which is the 50-person body selected to reflect the community's values and to advise the board on the curriculum. It stated that we need an investigation into the SHAC, but I have heard no evidence of wrongdoing. All I've heard is allegations. I have heard no actual wrongdoing. Some of the SHAC meetings were closed. That's correct. We could close them at the time. Legally, now, they have to be open, and they will be open. That's the only thing I've heard so far, is that the SHAC meetings were closed. If there was evidence or any evidence was presented, to justify an investigation, maybe so. But why spend the taxpayer dollars and resources if there's no evidence has been presented? It was suggested that the board rubber stamped the SHAC's recommendation in 2016, but the board spent 90 minutes on that topic. Every board member asked questions, multiple questions. The community came and spoke. So I'm not sure how that could be a rubber stamp. The curriculum is open and it's available to all parents to review at any time, as I stated. And 82%, 82.7% of 7th and 8th grade parents have chosen to allow their students to receive the instruction. Now, although Mr. Hilliard may feel that the curriculum is graphic or sexually explicit, most parents don't appear to agree with them. And he can simply choose not to allow his children to participate in the instruction. By asking you, the board, to throw out the curriculum altogether and to replace it, Mr. Hilliard is asking you to abide by his own values rather than the stated values of the community through the SHAC and the preferences stated by parents through the 82.7% opt-in rate. Mr. Hilliard's second request requiring SHAC meetings to be open was granted through state law, which is House Bill 1525. The law now requires that SHAC meetings be open to the public, and this request is moot. Although the second half of Mr. Hilliard's second request is to require SHAC members to speak to the public they're supposed to be representing. Now, this portion of the remedy is vague, and although the board can't require a SHAC member to speak to the public about any particular topic, like I said, the SHAC meetings will be open, so parents can come and speak their piece there. In addition, they can send any concerns or questions or comments to the email address at shac@neisd.net. Now, it's ultimately every parent's decision whether this particular curriculum or any sex education is appropriate for their student. I encourage all parents to review this curriculum and decide whether it's right for their students or not. That's all I have.
Thank you. Do I have board members that have questions?
Madam President, yes. Give me 1 second. I've got some sort of general questions, I think, for both parties, grievant and the administration. And then I'm going to try my best to go through the information provided in our packet. I guess the level 1, level 2 information, because I think after that it's mainly just referencing the things from those two levels. I guess my first question is for the grievant. You stated at the beginning of your presentation that there are obvious reasons that Mr. Hilliard was not present to provide the presentation. Can you elaborate that on that, please?
No, it's personal. Thank you for asking.
Okay. All right. Would you like me to refer to you as Mrs. H, the grievant? What would you prefer?
That was the understanding, but the district did not abide by that, so.
Abide by what?
The protocol from the previous meeting where it was initials used. So,
Okay. So Mrs. H?
that would be great.
Okay, we can go with that. Mrs. H, does this curriculum require a parent or a guardian to opt in?
The state law does. Yes.
I'm sorry, the state law, yes.
Yes.
To view. Would you agree that this procedure allows a parent a choice on whether their student can participate in this curriculum?
As stated, the opt-in rates are irrelevant to the legality.
We're not, it's a yes or no question. Would you agree that this procedure allows parents a choice in opting their children into whether or not they get to
Well,
view,
in a
participate
hypothetical.
in the curriculum?
In a hypothetical curriculum, or this one?
In this, would you agree that the procedure of having parents opt in to their children participating in this curriculum, do you agree that this is a choice for parents to participate in?
If the parent previews are accurate and easy to see, like at their campuses, because it's difficult when you're telling them that the TA approved it when they didn't, to know what the truth is. So it should work, but the SHAC has done a lot of good things, but in the past they did not.
Are you or the grievant, Mr. Hilliard, an attorney specializing in education law and or curriculum?
I'm not sure the relevance of that to my ability to speak.
If you're arguing the legality of this, I'm just asking.
Well, you all
qualifications.
amassed our children and you're not doctors.
Did you attend
Okay.
an official NEISD preview?
Excuse me just a minute. We will have, you will be respectful, and we're not going to have outbursts like that. And if you continue to do that, then I will ask that you be removed from the room.
Did you attend an official NEISD parent preview related to this particular curriculum?
No.
Did you ask for a review of the curriculum prior to filing the grievance?
I didn't file the grievance, but if you're asking about the grievant, I can
Yes.
speak on his behalf. No.
Okay. Although it is not a requirement, did you contact the school or physical education and health department prior to filing the grievance as encouraged in FNG local guiding principles?
The issue there, if this will takes a little bit longer, but it won't be
Okay.
controversial. The issue there was there was concern because at the presentation given off campus by a parent researcher that brought this whole thing up, that was on, I want to say it was November 18th at night. The date is a little escaping me because it's been so long. And then so there was some question when the grievance filed on December 5th, was that was day one for him, but we were afraid that the district was going to try to say, oh, you're the same person because you're married, therefore you've expired your day 10. So there was no opportunity for him to do that and feel that his F&G would be protected and under the timeliness.
Within the packet information we have with level 1 grievance, you rely on several pieces of information from a specific presentation that was conducted by a person not related with the school district. Is that person recognized as an educational attorney or considered a subject matter expert within the field of education and or medicine?
What's the definition of expert?
Somebody that is certified and
so-
or has a license to
I'm not sure.
review it. Okay. Since Mr. Hilliard did not see the presentation firsthand,
Sorry,
you-
it was posted to Facebook, so he saw
Okay.
the full video
Okay.
of the
Well,
presentation. Just to
okay,
clarify.
well, in the initial level 1 filing, it says he was given a debrief by you based on the presentation that you saw. So that's what I'm
Oh,
going
yeah,
off
that's
of.
correct. I said,
Okay.
oh, you have to watch this, and then he
Okay.
did.
Are you aware if Mr. Hilliard did his own research immediately after that to verify that the information presented in that presentation was 100% fact?
If by immediately you mean that day, there was a very rushed, but then he had to leave town. So it was looking at all the handouts that you all received and the video, and that was without being able to get your hands on the curriculum at the time. That was what he had to go on.
At the bottom, one of the slides that we were provided with, because, and I can't find it. It was on our page 43. It was a table or a chart that speaks to,
The research?
yes, the San Antonio School, what are they teaching for human sexuality table. At the bottom, were you aware that it states, all statements or summaries must be understood to be opinion?
Oh, that was explained because the district threatened this individual that they had to be quiet and they were going to sue her if she told parents what was in it. And so So the advice was just say that everything's your opinion, and then you will not get sued by the district threatening to make her quiet, so she didn't tell other parents.
Okay. Mr. Pericello, do you have any information related to that particular part of this, as far as us, the district threatening somebody?
I don't believe we have a
keep
copy of
quiet.
that letter in our exhibits. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think those were part of a previous grievance.
Okay.
And my understanding was that this, I don't know if it threatened to sue or not, I can't recall, but I remember a letter was sent to this parent, letting her know that, the district essentially was not happy with the information that she was sharing in the public, because it wasn't accurate. But as far as a threat to sue, I don't recall that specifically said that.
Okay. Well, since that's not part of this packet, since it was brought up, I wanted to ask to get some clarification. So I'm going to go into, on the level 2, there was a few sections that kind of breaks down several of the issues and whether there's violations or not, just to give you some bearings as to where you are. For us, I believe this is all starting on page 62 or 63, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so starting on 60, sorry, apologize. I'm actually going to start on, goodness gracious.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
Do you want my
sorry.
paper
There we go.
copy?
It's for ours. It's actually page 69.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're talking about the Texas Education Code, where we discuss any course materials. It's under Section 2 in the Level 1 complaints, and it's bullet point number 2. And there is an alleged violation that abstinence is not in the student workbooks, and that we need to present abstinence from sexual activity as the preferred choice of behavior in relationships. What I guess I want to ask is, Mrs. H, would you agree that choice might infer options when it comes to when we say it needs to be the preferred choice of behavior in relationships?
Choice is, yes.
Okay. And in the curriculum, are there, well, I guess, do you agree that there are some locations where they list 4 different choices in the teacher workbooks where they talk about not having sex, and then there's probably 4 or 5 bullet points,
And there's
options?
Yes, sir. There's a STD handout for a couple grades and HIV where it says, here's choices to make sure you don't get HIV or STD. It says you don't have sex, you can use a condom, you could have sex with one person,
Right.
and you could get a vaccine. So those are 4
Right.
choices that they
Okay.
can equally make.
And Mr. Pericello, do you know, do students complete these assignments on their own, or are they led through this by a teacher, instructor, or somebody that's, I guess, been through training to give this give this curriculum?
Sure. They certainly led through it 99% of the time. I think there are 1 or 2 homework assignments, and they're to be completed with their parents.
Okay.
So, but yeah, there's no outside work that doesn't involve them working with another adult.
Okay. And Mrs. H, do you know of any information or data or evidence to suggest that the teachers are not leading the students through this curriculum by also talking about abstinence
They
as
are only
the preferred choice?
Under a grant, you have to teach the lessons with fidelity, or you're committing grant fraud. So they have to teach what's in the book, and anything extra would not be permitted, otherwise you'd be violating the conditions of your grant. So if I were to say, yes, they're teaching something different, then they were violating the grant, is my understanding. Not 100%, but that's my fear and concern of saying something like that. Teachers have to teach what the board approves and nothing else. And so, but I will say there was an assignment that the kids are supposed to call local, or CDC, call like a free health clinic, and see how nice they are, write their phone number down and that type of thing, which would be an independent activity, not necessarily under the supervision of a parent.
Okay. When we're talking about under section 2, number 4, where it says emphasize that abstinence from sexual activity if used consistently and correctly is the only method that is 100% effective in preventing pregnancy. One of the I guess complaints is that it emphasizes don't have sex, and it doesn't necessarily I guess say the word abstinence specifically. But I know in the education code in E4 it says it also states that that most effective is used in the actual education code language. And so is it possible is it possible that in the curriculum where they say the best way, do you think that is also equivalent to the word most effective?
It might be. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I think either way, the question is, does it really do that? Because the list we heard from Mr. Parachallo was mostly just descriptions or objectives or procedures. It wasn't actual content being conveyed to the students. It was, in this lesson, your students will learn. And so that's where these references are all coming from. But I don't know that it's necessarily, I do know that it's not necessarily saying that it's always, it does say it's most effective, but the question is the emphasis. So a mention is not the same as an emphasis. And even all the TEA complaint things, everything submitted was of the list that the PE health director who presented it to the board had compiled this list, and it said, it's mentioned here, it's mentioned here, it's mentioned here, and is mostly in teacher objectives or summary statements of what the lesson's about, not the actual content. So to have a list like that is a little without context, if that makes sense. It's not really emphasis.
Go to the next one here. So in bullet point 8, there is a contention that that parents don't get a basic summary of the content of draw the line, respect the line. And the education code says that we must provide a basic summary of the basic content of the district's human sexuality instruction. And I guess my question is, and bear with me, that what is your definition of the word basic?
Well, you remember, I flashed up on the screen that nothing was described for 6th grade. You couldn't.
Correct.
It was blank.
Yep.
And then what I would say for basic what the problem I have, the grievant has, is that when you looked at those descriptions, it was, it's abstinence-based, it's abstinence-based, it's abstinence-focused, it's refusal skills, it's everything that sounds good to parents, and not really getting into, well, there's more to it, and there is a lewd nature to a lot of these things, and putting images and suggestions in minds of 12-year-olds. So,
who considers it lewd?
Well, I think people who believe that sex is a gift from God, for one, who would say that there is talking about baby oil with children, maybe in uses of it, maybe not be particularly age appropriate. Maybe people who don't believe in God also want to protect their children's bodies and make sure that they stay as healthy as they possibly can, and not put ideas in their head of, you can draw your line where you want. Hey, maybe you feel like doing this Friday, but then Saturday your line goes back here. There's no anchor for it, and abstinence serves as an anchor. And I think when you're telling people you have abstinence till marriage, which is not taught at all, which is required by law, it becomes based on feelings. And I mean, I don't know, my teenager's pretty great, but I know when I was a teenager, my emotions fluctuated quite a bit. So I might feel a certain way at some time and feel a different way another time.
Do you think an outline, so in a presentation, do you think an outline would be considered forming the base of that presentation? So if I had a presentation and I were to provide you an outline of that presentation, a basic outline of that, would you agree that that's the base of what's to come in that presentation?
I think that could, and I think that's reasonable, but I would say if red flags are deliberately left out, then it would be maybe not a very honest one. But if we're honest and you do a list, it would at least pique a parent's curiosity to say, well, I want to see a little bit more before I agree to opt in. And then I would make it a little more available. Nobody wants to drive to Wetmore. We have our schools right there. So that's just a respect for parents type thing.
Moving on to complaint, I guess it's still complaint 2. And this is about, and I think some of this may have been, we talked about the parent notification, and Mr. Piricello, can you describe for me currently what is on the internet or the website, the NEISD website for?
It's in your packet. Let me see if I can locate it real quick. It's towards the back. Oops, sorry. So at page 669 of your packet, you see the landing page, essentially, the Northeast ISD Human Sexuality and Abstinence Education page. And it covers every grade level where it's offered, 4th, 5th grade, 6th grade. And 6th grade, actually, they don't get sexuality instruction. 7th grade, 8th grade, all the way up. Yeah, it goes through high school as well.
Okay.
So that's all there. Lots of links for them to click and follow to where they can actually get to the curriculum and all the related documents.
And at the time that the grievance was filed, what was available for individuals to see on the
So
website?
that was filed in, I believe it was filed in 2018. I'm not sure.
2019.
End of 2019.
2019. Yeah, I'm not sure what that page looked like in 2019. I'm not sure. Do you guys know back here? They're new also.
Okay.
So.
But the information that is on there now, was that available on the website at 2019, I guess is the question. I mean, according to the packet we have, it wasn't available. So I'm just trying to understand if that was something that has been added and if this is a moot point and we've now started moving beyond where we were.
I believe as of 2019 this information was there, but I'm not 100% positive. It may not have been when it was the curriculum was first adopted. But I don't have a date when this page was created.
So Ms. H, the information that's under complaint 2 on, I guess it's local record, page 68, but it's right after bullet point 10. The screenshots that are in there about from NEISD's website, I assume those were all taken at the time of this grievance being filed, or are these from a previous?
This was, yes,
Well
this
before
was
that.
taken at the time.
Okay. One of the contentions, I believe, is that the district put on their website or in the preview information that the draw the line and respect the line is new, and the contention is that it's not. Is it possible that their use of the word new means it's new to the district and not a new curriculum?
That's the way I took it.
That's
the way
new
the
to the
grievant
district?
took it. I think the complaint there with the grievant, if I recall, was that if it was adopted in 2016 and it had been in place for 2 years, putting no information online or not sufficient information online and calling it new would give you the excuse of, oh, the staff hasn't had time to update it with good parent information. And yet it was already in place for 4 semesters, or not 5, I think maybe 5. I don't know the math, but and so that criticism was not because the curriculum itself, which was written in like 95, was new, but just that, yes, new to the district.
Okay. There's also contention that parental rights are violated because you weren't advised of the graphic, sexually explicit nature of the curriculum. I guess I could ask, what is your could someone else's definition of sexually graphic and explicit be different from your
Yes.
specific?
100%, yes. Mhm.
All right, so in, this is under, I think it's still under that section 2, or complaint 2, sorry. Complaint 2, bullet point 2. There's an accusation that this could be a form of grooming, which is pretty alarming. Do you have any information or proof or evidence that this is being done?
Oh, well, in general, with certain types of curriculum, if you refer to the beginning of the packet, the handouts from that parent presentation, it describes the national standards, which are to teach kindergartners some things that adults can't even speak comfortably about. You'd get fired if you mentioned that word. And so it is a effort to infiltrate shacks. They're training people to go around shacks to close them down. They're moving people from cities to tiny little towns in Texas to try to infiltrate their shacks. And they're following some of the things that we're trained to keep it out. So I do think there is an orchestrated effort. But in terms of your specific definition of grooming, I mean, that's just the definition of grooming. It's the same as exposing them to literature.
Well, and not the definition of grooming. I'm aware of that, but
Yeah.
You're talking in generalities.
Yes.
Do you have any information for Northeast ISD where this has been something that has been an issue or something that has been brought to light?
Oh, absolutely not. I
Okay.
think it's just a concern that when we sexualize children by getting them way too comfortable using things that they're not even at the age of consent for, we're opening them up to risk of being taken advantage of or being groomed to some terrible person who wants to prey on them.
In complaint 3, we talk about the board, the rubber stamping the SHAC's recommendation. There is mention of that this curriculum contained offensive content that doesn't reflect community values. And I would like to know which community values are you referencing?
Okay. Well, I think in this, it mentions that it's the city or the district is, if it's reflective of the city, is like 60%, what did I say? What do I want to say? I don't remember where it is in here, but it says something about a predominantly Christian, maybe 60% Christian and a lot of Catholic Christian. But so I would say that the values of the majority would be that they would like, I guess, I mean, if they're following their faith, they would want to encourage maybe parents to interact with their children and learn these things. And that's interesting because, sorry, there's talking back there. Interesting because the research shows that it's in here too, that 85 programs were looked at and the only really effective ones were in a clinic-based setting and with parents involved. And it was a parent-child training, and the school-based stuff barely worked or didn't work. And the comprehensive, they only had one comprehensive sex ed that actually kind of maybe had some effects that they felt made a difference, but it was the parent being engaged that really made the difference. And so my thought is, maybe something that's more interactive with the parents instead of just like 2 pages sent home and things like that would be more reflective of those values.
Is it possible that there are Christians that won't necessarily agree with?
Oh yeah, and there's non-Christians that would agree with me. You
That's
asked
fine.
me just a generality, and that's if I
Absolutely.
had
I
to say.
guess in this complaint, it infers that if you're a Christian, you would agree with these complaints, and if you don't, then you're not Christian.
I guess if you're a
So-
Christian, if you're a Christian who believes that the body and soul are one and that they're not unique, separate into things where you can do whatever you want with the body and your soul will stay fine, if that's your Christian belief, that's okay, but most Christians believe that we're made in the image and likeness of God and that our body and souls are one, and what we do to the body affects the soul.
So there are some, under bullet point 1, there's some accusations that the previous, the individuals on the board that reviewed this or approved this curriculum, that they did, there were some soft accusations that they did not review the curriculum before they approved it. There's some just blatant comments that they just rubber stamped it. Do you know, do you have information to state, does Mr. Hilliard or yourself have any information to show that they did not review this before approving it?
Well, there are some open records requests that indicate that there was no arrangement of picking up of materials. And if you watch, in retrospect, you know, who knew about the 2016 board meeting? But after the district brought it up at level 1, the grievant was able to go review that, and you had someone saying, what's the name of this curriculum? And you had someone saying, is this abstinence? And so I think they betrayed that information themselves by just the forms of questions that were asked that showed unfamiliarity, not only with the one they were considering, but with the current one. So it's still on the internet, May 9th, 2016, and anybody can go fact check that.
Okay. And in number 2, complaint 3, bullet point number 2, say parents' opinions were not properly considered. What opinions were not considered?
I'm lost in the book, but I think I can
Okay.
answer it. Tell me if I'm...
It basically just says that parent opinions were not properly considered, and then it asks how many NESD parents attended the SHAC vote.
Okay. Well, my understanding is that there were subcommittees set up that had people from out of the district that were more in this profession or in this field that they were the ones that really looked at the curriculum, brought a high-level summary of it to other SHAC members, and they voted based on less than, I mean, they could have seen the whole thing, but necessarily did not need to in order to vote on the curriculum. And I already lost my train of thought. Sorry, I forgot the question.
So what opinions?
Were parents left out?
Well, yeah, what opinions were not considered, if that's what
Okay.
you're claiming in the grievance?
Okay, again, I'm not sure of the context, but I think if I had to off the cuff it, I would say there were a number of parents. My understanding was about 30 parents showed up at a SHAC meeting asking to have their voices heard, and were basically told to get out of there. And then shortly after that, the bylaws just disappeared. It just went away. And then the BDFR was written by the previous PE health director shutting down the thing. So none of that came to the board. It was just, we don't want to listen to the parents. At some point, we're shutting the whole thing down.
Mr. Piricella, do you have information as to why the meeting was closed at the time?
I'm not sure exactly which meeting she's talking about. I know there was one meeting where some individuals were trying to hand literature to some of our students, and I think for that reason they closed a meeting. I know that the final meeting before the SHAC, which I think was on March 29th of 2016, was an open meeting, and parents were able to come and speak at that meeting when they took the vote. And in that vote, only one person voted no, and there were 3 abstentions, I believe. So not all the meetings were closed. I think they closed at least one just because of just what they felt was disruption.
Okay, thank you. Under Section 3, there's some information about the Open Meetings Act, which obviously has been addressed at this point. And then in 2, some of this, Mrs. H., is the information that you provided to us in the presentation today. Mm-hmm. And I guess one of the questions I have is that there was some information saying that in bullet point B, it says that the person that gave this presentation at the time explains how to set yourself up to get your desired end and maintain it, including, quote, directly oppose parents' resistance. Mm-hmm. And in looking at those bullet points that are on that slide, there is one that says, be completely and overly transparent, rapport with parents and community. Mm-hmm. And then a few bullet points down, it says directly counter misinformation and opposition, whereas the complaint alleges that they're saying it's directly opposed parents' resistance. And I don't see that anywhere. So does that, I mean, could they be referring to an outside organization? Could they be referring to people that aren't necessarily from San Antonio?
Well, what,
I guess if the claim is that this presentation was given to directly oppose parents' resistance, I don't necessarily see anywhere on this slide where it says resist parents directly.
Right.
Is there something that I'm missing?
This is from the PE health director, who said we had to establish credibility and relationships. I don't know, let's see. I made a comment to a colleague earlier today. There was a phone call I had with one of our presidents of a certain organization that helps parents and teachers at one of our middle schools, who was standing strong because other parents, were trying to get in on those parent and teacher organization meetings and have a conversation with. And she's like, we're not going to let them in here. And I cannot tell you everything she said, but I wish I could have recorded that phone call conversation. I would have played it over every day for the next year. She just made you feel like they had your back, and they did. Our parents showed up at several of these meetings. Our SHAC parents showed up at several of these meetings that they were having and chewed them out, other parents, and told them to stop trying to scare people. So we were at a good place. But if we hadn't established that rapport with our SHAC members that we had, we would not have probably been in the same place. We, as I've already said, we dot our I's and cross our T's, but make sure everybody in the school district knows what you're doing because of the department representation we have on our SHAC. Everybody knew what was going on.
Okay. Is that information that's in our packet?
I've never heard that.
Okay, that's the first we're hearing of that. So based on the information that was provided to us, none of that is anything that we
But you
were given.
You asked for how it was being done and how the SHAC was managing to oppose parents. They were using other SHAC parents to do so.
So as we go to, I'm assuming that's not in our packet. When we're talking about the discrimination against girls, Title IX, it's bullet point number 4 underneath Section 3. And I guess the study that is cited that you brought up in your presentation today as well, it's the evaluation of the curriculum.
Yep.
And I guess in one sense you seem to be using as a way to support your argument, but then you talked about how the techniques, they fabricated data, and so I guess can you explain for me which parts you're using to support your argument and which parts seem to contradict your grievance?
Well, I'm not sure of anything that contradicts. Maybe you can point that out to me, because maybe my logic is just working differently. But what I can say about this study, the study that's quoted is done by if you look at the authors of the curriculum, they did their own research to see if it worked. Over a 3-year period from 1997 to 2000, they found that it did not help girls, and they put that in their information. And their chart shows that girls in 6th grade were more sexually active if they had the program. But that wasn't reported to the board. The board was told, no, there's a trend, it's moving in the right direction. So the actual data of this, that's why I think it says to please look it up, because there's a lot in here that shows that this program, which is being, people like it or want it, the research itself that the PE director had in her hand while talking to the board, but that was not disclosed. And so I feel like I would want to know if I was in your seat, does this help or hurt,
So in the grievance, there's a lot of statements of fact that it is not helpful to girls and that it discriminates against girls. But in the same token, you're using that research to say, well, they're fabricating data to fill the missing information. And so I guess I'm curious that,
Well,
that is your intent to use it to help your cause? Because there's also mention of how it isn't really a complete study, at least the way I'm interpreting it.
yes, so certain of the survey questions they had to make up. So they would administer surveys, and some of those things, because the parents pulled their kids out, they were so offended that they kept losing kids, and they were trying to track them all the way through 9th grade. But what happened was because it's a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade program, what happened was when the kids matriculated to 9th grade, they lost some of those kids because they went off to high school, right? So it was a little harder to keep control of that cohort. And so they lost some of that data, and then other kids moved away, and it happened to be a large minority population. And so I think you can probably say that the 6th grade information would be accurate, because the problem happened when they matriculated to high school.
So they didn't all leave because they were offended.
No,
As
they
you just
refused to
stated.
continue to participate starting, I don't remember.
Yeah,
I have to read the whole
'cause I
study,
went there.
maybe
So-
8th or 9th grade.
So,
But it states that. It states that they didn't like it. I'm not
Okay.
making that up.
and does the study also mention that the issues with girls might go deeper than the data is currently showing? In the conclusion, I believe it says that there's some additional information that some dating older individuals, coercion, that might need to be something that would need to be looked into
Right.
as far as girls are concerned.
When you do psychological or any scientific research, but this is mostly psychological, when you do that type of research, yes, you always bring in existing literature, and you always close with areas for future research. It's the way that they keep learning, but also the way they keep getting to do more studies and grants for more studies. So
Sure.
that would be a reasonable thing to put in there as a hypothesis, that's what they maybe were thinking was happening. But until you actually do the research on that, you can't definitively say that that's what happened.
Sir, can I respond to something, if you will?
Yes.
It was represented here that Rachel Naylor stood here in 2016 and did not share with the board this research that there was not an effect on girls. I want to make it clear that
Not true.
there were 3 different board members that asked a question about this during that board meeting, and it was very transparent to the board that this was the case, that empirically in this study there was not shown to be an effect on girls, there was not shown to be a reduction in sexual behavior, but there was shown to be a reduction in sexual behavior among boys. And so I just want to make that clear, because it was stated that that wasn't told to the board, and it was.
That's not what I said. I apologize, and I also tried to not use any names, but I didn't mean it that way. What was said was that by 9th grade, there was a trend in the right direction, is what she told the board, because a particular board member who did ask that question. So that part I tried to state accurately. What she didn't do was tell you the rest of the story, because she didn't say what happens in 6th grade.
Staying in Part 4 of Section 3, there is some footnotes about where we talk about abstinence, and there's some statements of I take them as they're conveying, the grievant is conveying statements of facts. Say studies are clear that abstinence leads to greater health, physical health, psychological health, improved academics, better relationships. Would you agree that there's possibly other studies out there that might say the opposite?
I would find that very hard to believe.
Or that may not make as strong of a connection between abstinence and
Well,
better life?
yeah, or I think, so I would look at the research, because there's good research and bad research. And
This I will say, we received an email with a link, came to the exact same website that you provided your study.
the website?
Mm-hmm. That has thousands of peer-reviewed
Yeah.
documents.
That's possible, but so my background is something that I would be qualified to look at that, so I'd be happy to look at whatever was sent to you. There are always flaws in studies, and so you would want to see if it's a fatal flaw. But in general, we're talking about the study that was done on this actual program showing it
Correct.
didn't work.
Well, the section I'm referring to is just talking about the abstinence
Oh.
specifically.
I see what you're saying. Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the other bullet points, or footnotes, II or 2, says, unfortunately, nowhere in these slides is there a discussion of protecting children from controversy or depravity, respecting their religious, moral rights, family values, or psychological well-being. And I guess my question is, again, do you have to, as a student in this district, participate in this curriculum?
I'm trying to find where that footnote
Yeah,
was too. Do you know where that is?
it's on local record, page 85. It's after the Man Love Fish More slides that you showed a little while ago, sort of towards the end of that.
Are you sure it's not referring to the slides for the webinar? Is that possibly?
Yes,
Oh,
I'm
there
sorry,
it
it
is.
is,
Okay,
it
it's
is.
okay.
It is a footnote to
Right,
that.
so those slides were just about getting in the kind of sex ed that staff wants to get in there, and talking about how to do that, but that staff member wasn't considering other impacts on children and families.
But I guess the question is, as a student, do you have to participate in this curriculum while you're at school? Do you have to sit in and listen to all of these? If it is something that
No, and some find it very difficult because they don't realize they're supposed to read these sexual stories out loud in front of their peers, and that's a little hard to take. So some would start and then maybe withdraw their children once the kid goes home, crying or traumatized, or it re-traumatizes them because they had a previous maybe abuse situation. So absolutely no one, this is an opt-in course, no one has to take
Correct.
it. But if you're going to have one, what about having one that meets the requirements of the law?
do you know one of the other items in here? This is kind of my last question for anybody else that wants to jump in. There's a lot of mention about, it says, no matter how well-intentioned, government can never replace mom, dad, grandparents, guardians, clergy, or caring relatives. And while I agree with that statement, do you know for a fact that everybody in any ISD has that available to them to lead them through this curriculum?
Everyone would have a guardian.
Correct.
And somebody, if you don't have a mom or dad, or any other relative, you would have a guardian or someone who's a ward over you. You would have someone, but it doesn't mean that you're prevented from finding help with your school counselor or anything like that. I mean, there are very loving employees who pour their heart out for kids and would do anything to help and nurture them, if, within their legal ability, of course. And so, but I don't think that's a separate. I think that's a separate issue. I don't think that you necessarily. It's kind of like if you had a student who can't get past ABC on the ABCs, you don't just stop teaching the whole class and kind of dumb it down to. And that sounds terrible. I'm sorry. I apologize. I shouldn't have put it that way. But you don't just stop teaching people the things that they need to prosper because one child needs particular help. You give that child the extra resources they need and let the others have the things that they need to thrive, while maybe recognizing the sensitivities of a child's home circumstances.
So there are resources such as the human sexuality curriculum that could be provided to these
Well,
students.
who would opt them in? You know what I mean?
A
That
guardian,
person,
as you indicated.
So I'm thinking if they care that but they might opt them into one that's more age appropriate, perhaps, or maybe in this case it has to do with legality more than anything.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byer.
Anyone else have questions?
I do have some questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Perichello, this question is for you first. On page, just so you can get there, 234, at the bottom of 234 and at the top of 235, and I'm referring to the letter that Mr. Lopez wrote. And he references an Attorney General opinion, DM 465.
I see that.
Could you please explain that opinion? I think I'm reading it to mean that it doesn't have to say abstinence, but it has to wait, oh, shoot.
I have not read the opinion, but yeah, based on the sentence, it seems to indicate that one particular source does not have to contain all of the information. They could receive the instruction through multiple different sources and in combination receive all the required elements. That's what I'm gathering from it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I do have another question. So of the first off, can you tell me what happens to a school district that adopts and teaches a curriculum that violates 28.004?
I'm not aware of what sanctions CEA would come down with. I mean, I would expect that if they felt like we did something wrong when we received that prior parent letter, they would probably first tell us to stop teaching it or, revise it so that it contains all the elements. I don't know that we would receive any other sort of penalty at that point, as long as we corrected the behavior.
Are you aware of any curriculum that any ISD has had in the past or currently that's in violation of 28.004?
I'm not, no.
Okay. Okay, Mrs. H. So I did listen to the tape, and I just had a question. So in that meeting, in that grievance meeting, you discussed partners and education, and but at the very end, you make a statement. I believe it was you that made the statement that says, "Take the parents out of it. Just look at the data." Can you explain what you meant by take the parents out of it?
I didn't hear the whole thing we just got it Friday evening, and I haven't heard it for over 2 years. So do you have any more context to that, like before that?
It was at the very end.
Should I play it?
You were speaking to, it was when you had thoughts, and Mr. Reasons asked, "Can I make a copy of that?" And you said, and the grievance said, "No, these are just thoughts that I have." One of them, the first thought was that you went over that there were 7 to 8. Wait, hang on. You described that the parent form for 7th and 8th grade lacks parental input, and then you said the lack of parent rights. You said there were a lack of parent rights. Can you explain why there were a lack of parent rights? Because I guess my point is, or my question to you is, if a parent is opting in and having the right to opt in, how is that a lack of parent rights?
Okay. Based on that, I can answer. I'm sorry, I cannot address the tape without maybe hearing what was before and what was after, but I can answer this question, what my opinion would have been. This is not the grievant talking now, because you're asking me my opinion. I would have the right to know what my child was being taught, and since 6th grade didn't have anything, and then the other information out there was very much, it's legal, it's abstinence based, and that type of thing. I would think I would have as a right as a parent. Well, I know I have the right under Texas law to direct their moral upbringing, and that's solely my and my husband's legal right. So if anything were to be taught in these lessons that were really of a moral nature, or anything that would undermine maybe our faith values or just what we want for health reasons, whatever it might be, whoever the parent is, I would say that that was a denial of rights because it's not conveying, like I said earlier, maybe the red flags or exactly what's in it. It's like, hey, everything, nothing to worry about, we're good. And in fact, I'm hearing that even this year. People are telling their students, oh, it's fine, it's fine. We teach this all the time. Just you don't want to skip out. You want to take this. Just tell your parents to sign this. That's really the parent's choice, you know.
But
So-
also a parent's choice to sign it.
Yeah, but
I guess, you referenced on page 50, and you actually stated the Texas Family Code. You said parents alone obtain the right to direct the religious and moral direction of their children. And so to me, that's an individual code. Like, that is the code that Sandy Winkley has for her children, and that Mrs. H has for her children, and Mr. H have for their children.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I don't know how, explain to me how, because what I'm hearing and maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, but what I'm hearing is that you want your individual code to be everyone's individual code.
I think that's kind of what's part of this issue, and that is that that's a really incorrect assumption that we're hearing a lot from various peoples, administrators and staff, that it's, well, you don't like, and we heard it here before 2 years ago, you don't like this curriculum, and you have the choice not to have it. Agreed. The problem is when parents aren't really told what's in it, which it's now better. It's now better, but a lot better. But when we weren't really told, and it was, you couldn't get your hands on it. I mean, I even called, well, I don't want to go there. You can't know what you're agreeing to. Does that make sense? Like, you wouldn't sign like a house loan if you didn't know how much it was going to cost you. You'd want to have accurate data before signing it off.
Well, that's why I went to the meetings. I did. That's why I went to the meetings, and I understand. I mean, I'm following what you're
Right.
saying, but I want to ask you about. There were a couple of pages in here that kind of caught my eye, and one being page 15, I think it is. And so I was curious to know why the theology of the body definition was in there. And I mean, I know theology of the body. I was taught by Brian Butler. I'm very aware of what that program is. It's a Catholic-based program. I'm Catholic. And then you had the statistics of 33% of NEIST families. Were those statistics NEIST families, or were you saying, was that a national statistic, a San Antonio statistic? On page 15, and then your chart is page 47, I believe.
Okay. Well, part of maybe what you're referring to is not my data. That's the packet that was handed out at the Parent Researchers Seminar. That's where the theology of the body aspect came from. It was the complete handout from that talk, so that there was some context to, because that was predominantly given to Catholics or Christians or whoever wanted to come and hear that religious aspect. That wasn't really taught. That was part of a handout that I was given.
So, but that was part of the packet. The grievance, right? I mean, that was those were documents that were provided
as evidence of obtaining the information from this particular parent researcher's presentation. Those were the presentation handouts that accompanied that talk.
Okay.
As far as the second part of your question, I don't know if the grievant researched that. It's been, again, 2.5 years and found out what that percent was or where that came from. But when we're dealing with, our educators that we're supposed to be full partners with, no one anticipated it would have to get to this point, or that would have to go through the rigmarole that it has. It was let me sit down, let me pour out my heart to you, let me tell you why I'm concerned, let me show you the law, please look at the law, and nobody would. And so you have this nobody realizes when they do a grievance that they're going to be interrogated. And I love your questions. I'm just saying where it's getting nuanced to where you think you have to word everything perfectly. That's not what the grievance is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a constant renegotiation. The F&G policy says so, that at every level, it's encouraged to try to work this out so it doesn't become a formal thing and become such a cost. So I appreciate you probing and asking, and I want you to keep doing that. I'm not trying to in any way be rude, but that's sort of my heart talking, is that parents we don't think of you as enemies, and we feel like when you don't want to hear, when we share something or want to share something, it's legal process. Shut it down.
No, I believe, I am glad you're sharing. I'm just, I'm concerned that there's not thought that there are other religions and values that families have outside of what the grievant is stating. And I personally, no, not personally. Okay, there's that. But and the reason I ask is, okay, they're on, you have some data.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this leads into this question. So see if I can find it here. No, hang on. It is a lot of paper. Hang on, maybe on this sheet. No. It's basically, it's the sheet that refers to, here are the next steps. Elements of harm is what the sheet is called, and I didn't write the page number on that. Do you recall what page number elements of harm is on?
Is this still part of that handout from the presentation?
Is that the same presentation? Because I wondered, looking to verify the data to see who's it from, and it says the data is from Texas Values. Who is Texas
Page 45.
Values? What page, Mr.
Page 45.
45, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I know, it's a lot. Yes, it's, yes, page 45. So Texas, so this was not part of the grievance, the grievant included it in his package, and I just wanted to know texasvalues.org. I looked them up. I looked them up. It's a political organization, I think, out of Austin is what I read. And I just wanted to know, is the grievant associated with this organization?
Well, that wouldn't be really relevant, would it?
Well, the only reason I ask is that I wondered why he looked for data, and you were speaking about data and how important data was, and to gather data from vetted organizations, and this is a political organization. I wasn't sure of the connection.
This is part of the presentation handed out at that parent meeting
Okay.
that he saw online. And there was a link to print out all the handouts. I think it was like, I don't know, 50 pages or something like that, whatever
Okay.
it was. So this is just from that.
Okay, I'm sorry that he's not here. I wish he was, to be able to answer the questions himself. But, the part where he spoke to the board rubber stamping decisions, you live in the same household. You know how much preparation it takes to prepare for these meetings. And I wish he were here so I could ask him why he felt that way,
Well,
and that board members were unprepared.
let me answer the rubber stamp part first. That's a colloquialism that was thrown out like not a big deal. It just seems like things are rushed through, and that because there were, I don't know, 700 unanimous votes in a row, that maybe it was just not really, like, not wanting to to disagree. You know, I don't really know that, but I don't think rubber stamp had a legal meaning until he got a level 1 letter written back where it was very clear that the author of the level 1 response letter, which after denying him a conversation, that was clearly a trigger word. So that was interesting, because then you say, oh, wait, rubber stamp has a legal meaning. And then it means that if you are rubber stamping a committee, basically, then they need to have open meetings under the Open Meetings Act. So that's what the only reason that word even really got interesting was because the author of the level 1 letter clearly was defensive on that particular phrase. So if that gives you context, that's why. And so, well, let's see where that goes. So I think there were evidences. I think I discussed them earlier. But the issue was that evidence couldn't be part of this grievance because the district was already trying to say it was untimely. So you can't go and all of a sudden put in information back to 2016 when the board was absolutely asking questions like, what's the name of this program? That might show unfamiliarity with what they were actually agreeing to. Because under 28.004A, they're required to ensure it reflects the community's values.
Okay, thank you. I just have one last question. Yes, anybody can do research and find information, and people will sometimes look for information that agrees with their values and their beliefs. I truly believe that. Instead of being open and accepting and to maybe what might be truth. But I'd like to know, did you seek any legal advice when the grievance started with his accusations that we were violating Code 28.004 to help interpret curriculum, law?
Well, if you get 10 attorneys in a room, you're going to get at least 8 different answers. And so when you have words as clear as must and, the law is supposed to be written to where the people can interpret it, and not all of it. But what happens is when the lawyers get their hands on it, they reinsert words like you see in level 1. In level 3, there were words that were not correct. They were switched out to convey a different meaning, such as at level 3, the answer was that the board can adopt any curriculum it wants, when the truth is that's not what the law said. The law said any curriculum the board adopts must have these things. So it was a little wordplay. Whoops. It was a little wordplay that even somebody without a law degree could see that they switched the words, it changed the meaning. And so it shouldn't have, I don't need a law degree to read the Constitution either. And so while attorneys have their role, I don't think that you should have to or need to consult them for every, thing. I don't ask them how to read a nutrition label and that type of thing. It's just, common sense. And this one is so straightforward.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm done.
I do. I'm going to piggyback on what you just finished saying right now. That when you get 10 different lawyers in a room, they're going to have interpretations. But that kind of means that to me that also is like the same as somebody that's not a lawyer, that's not educated in the law. So your interpretation of the law could be different from somebody else's interpretation of the law. Would you agree to that?
Not on 28.004, but yes, I do agree that people can have different opinions, and that's why you have to have dialogue, to come to a resolution. And as full partners with the board and with the educators, that's what the grievant always wanted to do.
So one of your remedies is to halt, draw the line, respect the line. So if that's granted, let's say if it's granted, what would you tell members of the SHAC then about the decision to reverse it, to halt it, since they were entrusted by the community to review and present this as the recommended curriculum?
Well, one of the things that that became apparent was that there was not the when you try to find out who looked at the legal compliance of it, that really wasn't entering into those conversations. And the proof we could look at here is that when it was asked, is this compliant? It was a checkbox. It wasn't a deep dive. It wasn't, maybe there was some things with an attorney that would be privileged. And so I have to say that's fair, that it could have been run through an attorney. But I don't know that that's something that the SHAC would have really looked at. They would have looked at, and also you had it being offered for free. And so that's very appealing. And, as we heard, other districts were getting in on it, and it was sort of, this Planned Parenthood of Santa Cruz trying to get it into Bexar County. Now they are no longer Planned Parenthood of Santa Cruz. They have a new publisher name as of 74 or something like that when they founded it. But that's something I don't think the SHAC members really knew. They probably didn't know. They weren't, they might not have known this is getting Planned Parenthood type activity into our schools.
Do you have evidence of that?
Yeah.
So what would you tell a SHAC member that disagreed with you on that and said, yes, we
They
did?
knew it was Planned Parenthood?
No, they knew that everything that you just said right now, that the review and of the curriculum and the thorough review, what if they disagreed with you on that?
Well, it depends on if they were on the subcommittee or if they were on the committee, if they reviewed every page, if they knew what they were looking at. Or, I'm watching the SHAC process now, and people are voting on curriculum they didn't see is my perception is what's happening. And so I don't know what they did, but we can learn from things and do better every time. That's what I would say. I would say thank you for your service, but I would also say who pointed you to SHAC.
Okay. This is just just kind of a general question. Like, what would you tell a parent that approves of this curriculum?
Good for them. That's completely their parental right to. They can do that. They're in charge of directing the morals of their child. So it's not for me to say anything except you be that mom or dad, and you can be. It doesn't bother me or affect me at all. That it's about curriculum compliance with the law. The grievance has been completely consistent with that for 2.5 years, that it's about the law, not about wanting someone to not see something or to see something. That's the parent's role.
Okay. I think I'm done. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to go back to the issue of this being a legal curriculum. And as you stated, and this was the grievance, Mr. Hilliard's first request that this curriculum be gotten rid of. So, but we have the district believes that this is a legal curricula.
Yes, our council has reviewed it, TA's reviewed it, I've reviewed it. Everybody that reviews it, I think, comes to the same conclusion. And it's tricky because you do have to read the whole thing. It's very hard to get little snippets, and even all the things that I read, it's very hard to come to a conclusion overall. You have to read the whole thing and see, it comes throughout every lesson, that it's abstinence. Abstinence is the main focus of this whole curriculum. And also, at least 7 other school districts within Bexar County are teaching it, and they have their own lawyers that I'm sure they've talked to about the curriculum. I don't know how many districts within the state, probably quite a few, have it as well. So I believe that if this were to go further, if this was to go to the commissioner or go in front of a judge, I believe it would be upheld as legal. But it's not like you could just read a couple pages. You really do have to read the whole thing, I would say.
So someone's perception of the curriculum may not be the reality.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And the people who've reviewed it, besides the SHAC, have been educators with credentials?
Besides the SHAC, even after the fact, or, I know...
Before and after. Because from what I know, this was started back in 2011.
Yeah. And go ahead, sorry.
And the data collection began in 2013.
Right.
So, and I am going to assume that those were people in the education field that were truly certified to be doing this type of research.
Sure, there was
and
a-
investigate
sure.
this curricula?
Yes, and it started in 2011, and then up to, the subcommittee that was formed, the subcommittee of the SHAC, was a very diverse group, and it had parents on it. It had several, I think at least 4 or 5 district educators on it. It had a clergy person on it. It had guests from Metro Health that came in, and UT Health and UT Teen Health that came in. So it was a very qualified cross-section, it seemed like, of people to do that hard work and heavy lifting, and to go out and view different curriculums, and really narrow it down to a few. And so, yeah, I believe they were qualified to do that.
Okay. There was also a discussion earlier about opinions and legal opinions varying and things like that. Could you address how a legal opinion, it seems that this has been vetted multiple times now, and all the legal opinions seem to say that this is a legal program.
Our legal opinions say that, yes. I don't know that there's been any, aside from the letter we got from TEA, I don't know that there's been any sort of published legal opinion out there. There's not been an Attorney General's opinion, something that has real strong authority that would apply to all. Either way, it hasn't been ruled out, hasn't been ruled in, but we feel confident that it would be upheld if it was to go to that route.
So we are not aware then of any other districts being taken to court for this curriculum that it has been asked to be shown that it's illegal or legal or anything else then, right? There's no other districts out there that are...
I'm not aware of any, especially
Okay.
not that have gone to court. I don't know if there have been other grievances. That's possible, but I'm not aware of them.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
All right, so we've kind of relied on experts, people who have knowledge in these fields, to answer our questions on this curriculum then?
Absolutely.
Would that be fair?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Is there anything I can
Mrs.
say?
H., you spoke of honesty, and in the presentation that you saw that was not the district's, was that person qualified as an expert in sexual education matters?
Yes.
They're
I would say
they're
so.
certified? They're certified
so
as...
your definition of expert is certified by an agency of some sort? I don't know.
Maybe a master's degree in education?
You could ask if you would like to. One thing
No, I was asking, you were depending on this presentation
yeah, that
as...
individual's here if you would like.
As
if you would
on,
like to.
no, I'm just asking you right now. You were talking about that presentation as your basis for everything that we're here for today. And I would assume then, because I think it's very evident that you do research, that you did research this person and you were confident in their master's degree in education or whatever, that they were presenting an honest representation of this curriculum.
What I would say is if educators are considered experts to compare it to the law, but they're not lawyers, maybe...
I think we use the lawyers for the law and the educators for the education.
Oh, okay.
But that's what I'm going for. The
Oh, okay. I
person
thought
that
you were
you're-
asking
this-
about
No,
the-
this presentation that you're depending on, that brought us here today, really.
That presentation, well, there's... Did you see anything that was inaccurate in there?
I think we're supposed to be asking the questions.
Well,
I'm
I know,
sorry.
but,
All right,
if there's a particular flaw, you
there-
can point it out. I could probably
There
address
was
it.
also a mention made of keeping, of this being about parents' choice. Can you help me understand then why the grievant wanted $100,000 from NEISD?
The grievant did not.
Yes, ma'am, it's in the documents right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know they were selectively placed in there. When the grievant filed,
No, ma'am. This document is the, let me get the actual.
I'm aware of it. It's okay.
It is docket number 006 R110, R10.
Yeah, ma'am,
10,
it's
2020.
private. Ma'am, it's private. I'm sorry.
And
Stop.
that's before the Commissioner of Education, the state of Texas. This
Okay.
is the public document.
It is concealed because of FERPA laws, ma'am. I tried to stop you. If you would like my answer, I will give the answer.
Can we get a legal expert opinion on this?
I'm not sure how it would be concealed under FERPA, but if
Because
it's...
Here's
parent
Mr. Lopez,
ANF.
too.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, the Commissioner of Education document that you're referring to was just, that's the actual amended petition for review that was filed by the grievant. I don't believe any particular FERPA information would be included in that particular document.
No, I'm not asking any FERPA. I'm asking why the grievant, Mr. Hilliard, is asking for the respondent, any ISD, to pay the petitioner $100,000.
But if you would let me answer, I started to and then you interrupted me, but I do have an answer. He did not. His lawyer contacted Mr. Lopez, and then he submitted it without the authority or permission or even asking of the grievant. And when the grievant found out, the lawyer was no longer soon thereafter representing him.
So Mr. Hilliard did not read the document?
It was filed with the commissioner prior to him seeing it. When he filed as pro se initially, there was no request for anything like that. It got put back and forth and kicked out because apparently you need a lawyer to get into the system. And so for a very short time, he spent quite a bit of money to get an attorney to refile. That's why it's an amended petition for review, because the first one was thrown out. In the amended one, the attorney went, and we told Mrs. Grona this, she was supposed to communicate it with all of you, that he never asked for any money. That was the attorney doing that. Besides, under what would that even make sense? It was not something that he had anything to do with, nor, even though it's attorney-client privilege, nor did he discuss with his attorney. So if you've carried that animosity for 2.5 years, instead of talking to him about it, you might not be so angry. He did not ask for any money.
I think you're assuming some anger. Again, it's perception and reality.
Well, it had to do
this
with you interrupting
curiosity.
me and not letting me finish my answer. As soon as I said no, you jumped on me, so I took that as anger. My apologies.
The curiosity question still remains of $100,000 as compensation from the petitioner. I am assuming he was paying the attorney for these documents, so that would be, to me, that he is requesting $100,000. It's right here.
Ma'am, I'm not sure if you've ever had to hire an attorney, but sometimes they don't show you what they're going to file or tell you what they're going to file. Have you ever had an individual attorney? Because that's just not the process, and you can believe what you want, but it's false. And if you're going to judge based on false information that you have no proof for, then you're going to make a decision that's arbitrary and capricious and not based on the substantial evidence standard. You're going to base it on a preconceived notion of something that you've decided without 1 ounce of actual proof that was any intention of the grievant.
And I'd like to review again, just one more time, the issue of a parent's choice. If your choice is to get rid of this curriculum, don't you feel that then infringes on the choice of other parents?
Did the previous curriculum infringe on somebody's choice? It was showing effectiveness, and the pregnancy rates were coming down. It was 98% opt-in at the time, and nobody accused that of being anti-choice for anyone else. But it was switched to be updated, even though they're the exact same age. The two curriculum were about the same. And I don't think that the grievant really cares if that's the program that goes back, but you have to put something down. And instead of leaving it, oh, you can't teach something, well, can you just get the last one back because it's already been through the process? And so that's the other problem with the grievance process is the remedies, they're not set in stone. They're a negotiating point. But when no one will talk to you from the district, then it comes to this, and it's, well, we can't give you that because of the specific wording of the specific thing that you asked for. That's not the intent. That's not working with parents. That's the answer.
Okay, let me try one more time with the question then. The question then, though, is if your choice is to get rid, the grievant, one person, chooses to get rid of this curriculum, does that not infringe on another parent's choice to be the parent of the child that they want taking this course? So you would take away the choice of, right now, 82.7% of the parents that want their child in this program.
Do they want their child in this program or in a program?
My question is, if this program was removed because of your choice, would that not infringe on the choices of 82.7% of the parents that want their child in this program?
Have you
They
surveyed the
chose-
parents to see if they want this program versus a different one? Because I think again, this
Madam
is a logical
Chair,
error.
I think I'm
No,
through.
I'm answering,
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
answering your
No,
question.
I'm sorry. I've
No,
tried
it
three
would-
times, and
I've tried
all I
to-
really wanted was to know is if your choice
Mm-hmm.
to get rid of this program would infringe on the rights of 82.7% of the parents
The grievance
who
choice
want.
to have a curriculum that complies fully with Texas Education
Which it
Code
does.
is all.
That has been shown that
Ma'am,
it does.
I showed you 3 ways where it didn't. It's a very simple thing. It didn't in any of those areas. And it doesn't, and that was including the whole curriculum. It wasn't one lesson here, one lesson there. It was the whole curriculum. In 2 minutes, it was shown that it's not compliant.
Madam
I know
Chair,
you want
I
it
don't-
to be, but it's not. And so
I don't think I'm going to get an answer, so I'll turn it over
I did
to
answer
the next
you.
person.
I
No,
answered you
that was
4
it.
or 5
Thank you very
times.
much.
Okay.
Well, you were
So-
on the shack, ma'am. You were on the shack that entire time, and so and you voted for this curriculum. So I understand why you are very, very resistant to consider it illegal because it would have implications on you. And also, you campaigned on it, and you went out and you told people that it was legal, and so that would have political implications on you.
What? All right.
So this resistance is not you wanting to get facts; it's you wanting to get political points or some kind of answer that you want to put in my mouth. When the fact is, I don't think you're necessarily somebody who should have been on here. Maybe you could have considered to recuse yourself because you do have the political and the history of voting for this. You didn't know, though. That's the whole thing. The grievance has been saying this whole time. You probably had no idea that it didn't comply with the law. You were probably told that it did. And every time he gave you an out, every time he gave this whole board an out, nobody took advantage of that.
Just for the record, I've never been on the shack.
Okay.
Your name's on the shack membership list. I have it right here.
I have some questions. Why didn't you or your husband attend the parent previews that were done by NEISD?
Well, at the time of filing, our children were, well, at the time of getting here, let's see, it was elementary.
No, I'm talking
sixth
about,
grade.
go ahead.
Well, without talking about my children, of course, and about, our personal private parenting decisions, which are our business, based on the copies and examples of the curriculum that were provided at that meeting, I didn't think it was necessary.
Okay. How did you know about the presentation that was done by the parent?
Word of mouth.
Okay. And so you chose to attend that one instead of the one that was done by Northeast?
Well, this was I don't know if it was after the fall session had already been, the lessons maybe had already been given, but I'm not sure. I didn't really advert to the Northeast one.
Okay. And I think we've talked about this. I had a lot of questions that other people have asked. But your grievance relies,
I understand.
Mr. H's grievance is basically the grievance that was filed back in 2017. It's all the same materials, relied on all of that information to then base this. And again, so I think my question is, was there someone in the education field or an attorney that either worked with the person who did the presentation or worked with your husband to go through 28.004 and say, yes, I agree this violates this, I agree that this is not correct? I mean, did somebody in either the education field or an attorney help that parent or help y'all?
I don't have the answer to the first part of the question.
Okay. I mean, I understand that as a parent, it's, you have the opportunity to go through education code is simple enough. You can read it, like you said, the Constitution. I'm just curious because, the allegation is pretty serious that the district has adopted a curriculum that violates the law, has been doing so for many years, and I want to know how you can substantiate that allegation.
Okay.
Based on your interpretation, this other parent's interpretation.
Well, we can go back through the slides, but it
No.
was, okay. Well,
My question was, did someone in the education field or an attorney help y'all review this information and say, yes, this is a violation, you need to move forward with your allegation?
it's possible. It's possible, but I don't have that answer. But
So it's possible that they helped your husband?
no, it's possible. Well, anything's possible. But what I guess I would answer is it's not rocket science.
Okay.
And I don't think you have to have a particular degree, and I don't think you have to have an education background to look and see that when the not have sex is mentioned, it's just an objective, not a lesson. That doesn't take a lot of, it doesn't take a lot of work to figure out that that's not actually being taught to the kids, it's just being mentioned. So you can mention, but if you're not conveying the material to the students, it's not really being taught. So that's kind of pretty simple. I don't think I'm unintelligent, and I don't think that the expenditure of money, to go out and hire experts is necessary when it's kind of obvious, I suppose.
Well, okay, again, I think that's your interpretation, because I did review the entire curriculum before May of 2017, when it was adopted.
16.
Or,
Yes,
16. And, have gone through a previous grievance and have gone through all of the information, and it is my interpretation that it is not violating the law. So I think your interpretation and your husband's interpretation are different. Okay, I'm sorry, I've got a lot of tabs on this, so I'm going to ask you. This was the appeal to the commissioner. It says, the existence of any ISD sex education program was never presented to petitioner by any member of any ISD, nor did any ISD provide petitioner with any written notice of same. So my question to you is, were you aware of the parent previews that were done by the district?
At what time?
Well, I believe that this grievance was filed when
I think I saw it after it was filed. I think that's when I first saw it, because there was some kind of video, but I'm not the grievant here, so
and that's
that would be a
what's
separate
so
question for him.
disappointing is that this was his grievance. You're representing him, I understand, but there's a lot of questions that I think he could answer or provide an answer for us. So then let me ask you this: did you receive the form to opt in?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I'm trying to understand why they're stating that you were never aware of any of this information.
Well,
So-
no, I guess what I'm getting at, there were some little web videos that were put onto, I want to say, Skyward or something, and but after having seen the material here from the presentation and looking at those videos, I was pretty shocked that they were so
So it was almost
non-descriptive.
like you chose not to look at the NEISD parent preview, and so that kind of, while you're saying that it wasn't provided to you, if an opt-in form was provided to you, or information about a parent preview, you just chose not to attend.
And you're referring to something the commissioner stated?
Yes.
Okay, so a couple of things weren't quite right in that. I mean, there's just a few things. So if you would like to see the briefs, those are the words of the grievant, and those are very accurate, and footnoted and backed up with
Okay.
everything in the local record. Some of the characterizations might have just missed a little point because it was extensive. The documentation was extensive, just like you all tried. It's a lot to go through. So, but it wasn't like a material error that made that big of a deal to not get perfect.
Okay. And I don't really want to harp on this, but I'm going to ask this again. About the $100,000. I'm just curious how that amount was arrived at. And
No,
and I
no.
really, I have a hard time believing that as prepared as I've seen Mr. H and how thorough he is in reviewing, that he did not review this document before it went to the commissioner.
If you would like, I don't know because of attorney-client privilege, but he could probably provide you with the timestamp of his email. He got a copy from his lawyer.
Okay.
And see that it was already filed with the commissioner. That's a possibility.
Okay. So there had been no conversation
No.
whatsoever between them?
No, because-
He said, I want you to file this for me, file this complaint.
Well, he said,
and
I'll
then-
get it back in the process. So once you're kind of out of the process, it's really hard if you're a person to know how to handle that process. If you're a person, everybody's a person. But if you're just a regular person to navigate the system, so most things die. They don't make it to the commissioner level, or if they do, they get, there's something that, whatever, gets tossed out. And I forget what the error was in the first thing, or if some issue, something he didn't file correctly, or maybe, I don't even know. But then, so the lawyer with the professional experience of the wording and this is how you have to set it up and have to ask. So I don't know his motivation. It was just a surprise. It was a surprise to have that filed, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say
But
this.
it would be filed on Mr. Hill, or Mr. H's behalf, correct?
On his behalf, and then he spoke to the attorney after that saying, what's this? So.
Okay, and there was no way to go back and take that out of that petition for,
Well, the attorney told him something, and I don't want to convey it because it was attorney-client conversation, but I will assure you that the attorney didn't even mean it. I'll leave it at that. The attorney had a strategy, and that he said was a good strategy. And once it was done, you have to follow you're in a legal situation, and the attorney wants to keep going down a path. As a client, I guess you could say no, but I mean, this is very new to both of us. We're not litigious people, and it's not a comfortable situation.
okay. Mr. Piricello,
Yes, ma'am.
do you know anything about how things are filed with the commissioner? Or maybe it's a question for Mr. Lopez. If a client were to hire an attorney to file their appeal to the commissioner, would that attorney do that without the client seeing it or reviewing it?
Not typically. I don't believe an attorney would typically file anything on behalf of their client without the client knowing at least some of the basics of what they're asking for, what relief they're seeking.
Okay.
So that would be very unusual, I think, for an attorney to file a $100,000 demand on behalf of a client in any forum without the client knowing.
Okay,
Can I follow up on that?
sure.
So if this happened, though, that this attorney did file this, and then the grievance said, oh, no, I don't want to do that, can it be amended? Could it?
Certainly, yeah, they could go back and change their petition, I believe. I don't know all the commissioner's rules about, when filings have to be filed and how you amend them, but I assume that they could attempt to at least.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
And I have another question, but it's specific to Mr. H, and so I just don't even think it would make any sense to ask the question. But maybe you could speak for him, so I will go ahead and say it. Had said that, this violates parents' rights. But again, we know that parents have to opt in order to participate. And when we had our meetings in April with the mask issue, he had said that he felt that the board was invading parent rights, and he was hesitant to tell other parents what to do with their kid. So my question is, how is this situation different from that?
Okay, so, well, that's not really in the local record, but that's a fair question. I think it's consistent that parents have full authority over their own children. And so when parent rights are violated, it's because a government or some other entity with power tries to interfere in that relationship. And so I know that it's the talking point that we heard consistently, that it's opt-in, it's opt-in, it's opt-in. Yes, but if you're not telling the parents or making it clear what's really in the program, because if those webinars, or not webinars, the little web videos were so outlining and vague, and then the descriptions were abstinence, there was not really, I would say, correct information, or in my opinion, or what's the word? Maybe sufficient information for a parent to make that informed consent, and that's consistent with the other issue of forcing people to do things without informed consent.
Okay. I think that's all of my questions.
I know it's not my right to speak, but I need to say I am so sorry for saying it's a Planned Parenthood program, because it's not. It's a publisher that spun off of that, and I really need to be clear that while it may have its origins in common with Planned Parenthood of Santa Cruz, this is, it would be really wrong to say that particular company is in our schools. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Does anybody have any further questions? Okay, if not, Mrs. H., you have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Oh, not yet. So you'll have 2 minutes for your closing statement, and then Mr. Porcello, you have 2.
Okay. Ready? Okay. All right. So one of the things I would maybe recommend is if there's this differences of opinion on how things should be interpreted, could the board not ask for an AG opinion? Maybe that's the resolution, and then everybody wins, and then it can be conveyed to all the other districts without a lot of expense. This situation could go away, and we've spent a lot of money on this. I did want to correct a couple things that were said. The HIV, STD approval from the TEA is a totally separate list from sex ed. So those two facts are not the same. We did not record the party that was played saying those things about parents that were very disrespectful. That was not our recording. The district provided that. That was not ours at all. We were shocked to hear that on Friday, and I've almost thrown up about 10 times thinking about an educator saying that about a child or their parents, or it was shocking. But that's very conveying of how damaging maybe that this whole thing is, how the shack has and the curriculum have really they're more important than a child. Why? I mean, there's something wrong if that's the case. Again, I showed the proof very quickly, very easily of how using the whole curriculum, it's not met on those 3 regards. We are glad to see, the grievance glad to see the shack opening up, but we still have some work to do. There's a lot of questions, and thank you for the improved parent previews. That's good. But it shouldn't have had to take filing grievances to get some of those changes, and we just wish that the board and the district would partner with parents and be more open to hearing them and trusting them. That's pretty much all I have to say.
And that's time.
Thank you.
All right. We just request that you deny the first requested remedy to halt DTL, RTL, draw the line. I think one thing that wasn't mentioned was just the cost of the district that this would incur, because our teachers are not trained on the former curriculum, Choosing the Best, which was from 2008. So this would require us to train all of our teachers on a whole new sex ed curriculum. In the interim, while the shack is considering replacing the curriculum. That doesn't make any sense. So again, we feel that the curriculum is legal and it should not be overturned. And if Mr. and Ms. H feel that this curriculum is sexually explicit or somehow inappropriate, the SHAC is considering it. That's the place to take those concerns for when they are adopting a new curriculum potentially, or if they want to stay with the same one. But it does need to go through the SHAC so that it reflects the community's values and it's consistent with law. The second request, again, is moot essentially, except for the request that SHAC members speak to the public. We request that portion of the remedy be denied because it is vague, but the SHAC meetings will be open. Finally, we don't have a recommendation about the third requested remedy, that you review any curriculum that is adopted. It's not administration's place to tell you how to do your job as a board. That's strictly up to you whether you want to basically grant that remedy or not. And that's all I have to say.
There was a fourth one.
At this time, we're now going to do public comment, but I would like to ask for a 5-minute recess, if you don't mind. Okay, at this time, the board will receive comments from those individuals who signed up to speak on the agenda item tonight. Speakers will be called up to speak in the order in which they appear on the sign-in sheet. We want to hear from everyone who signed up. As I said earlier, we understand that the community is passionate and has different viewpoints on this agenda tonight, but we remind everyone to act in a respectful manner, particularly while someone is speaking. Please do not disrupt any person providing comments to the board. It is our expectation that individuals who finish speaking will not be confronted. Any person or group engaging in outbursts of any kind, whether supportive or not supportive of a speaker's comments, causing a disruption or not otherwise complying with our expectations, will be warned, and if they persist, will be removed from the meeting. I would remind you that you can submit written comments to the board at any time by email at board@neisd.net. Mrs. Huey, will you call the first speaker?
Number 1. Were they given numbers?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say my name. Good evening, President Grona, board members, Northeast board members. My name is Letty Bresnahan. I am a former board member, former board president. In fact, I was the presiding officer at the meeting in May to which the grievant refers. I'm also a very proud parent of 3 Northeast grads, and I was a parent for 20 years at the school district. So I would like to remind the audience, the administrators, and everyone in this room that the process by which educational curriculum is adopted was in complete alignment with district policy, which is reflective of TEC code. I looked at the code again, and every step in that code was followed. Very important. Further, the normative practice for this school district is that legal representation be present at all board meetings. And I know that some of you will recall that there was great discussion about that process and practice due to very rigid budgetary constraints at the time. We always, and we decided that it was too important to forego legal representations at all of our meetings. This school district has a very long history of incorporating policies and procedures that reflect and comply with the law. I cannot state that emphatically enough, and I am offended that someone could impugn our reputation as board members, and 2 of you were on the board at the time, to state that one would rubber stamp. Well, first of all, we serve at the pleasure of our constituency. We are elected. And if our constituents feel that we are rubber stamping or not doing our due diligence, they can vote us out. That is the process. Furthermore, the fact of the matter is there are 7 board members of which consensus must be obtained for anything. So the system in and of itself protects conflicts of interest and bias. Based on that fact alone, the system was done far before and it's brilliant. The leadership, as a parent and as a school board member, they were the most respectful. And I used to say, I cannot believe how they can find the one student that had an issue of some sort, and they were on it immediately. I never understood how they did it with 68,000 students that they had to represent.
Sorry,
Thank
that's
you.
time. Number 2.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Sanchez Rocha. I am a member of the Northeast SHAC, and I have been a proud parent and now committee member since my boys were in elementary school, and they are now adults. So I'm standing here today to support NEISD SHAC and the work we have done since I have been on the committee. I've heard the presentations that were published on social media, and I am appalled at the misinformation that was and still is publicized. The volunteers who are parents and community members that serve on SHAC are dedicated and committed to our students and the staff who serve within our boundaries. I'm going to go back to 2016 when we started discussing sex ed curriculum change. We read and reviewed 4 different curriculums, and numerous factors were taken into account, such as grade-appropriate topics, evidence-based curriculums, lesson plans, exercises, student-parent components, and that's just to name a few. It was a thorough year-long process. We read, for example, from the American Journal of Public Health Association, all before making our decision. Members were given opportunities to come to the district office to check out and review the books and lessons plans. In my case, I did it electronically because I had a busy schedule, and I had 30 days to do so. Afterwards, letters were sent to parents and meetings were scheduled, and we made the curriculum, again, an opt-in choice. Not only could parents opt in regarding whether they wanted their child to participate, but they also had the choice to opt in with regards to which lesson plans. We cannot put our students in a box with regards to their situations, their values, their faith, their thoughts, their actions. But we do have the responsibility to take all students into consideration when making decisions. I stand here knowing that we, as the SHAC, went above and beyond what we were required to do. We did not just follow the law, but took it a step further by choosing curriculum that had evidence-based research, having parents opt in rather than opt out, ensuring parents came to the peer reviews, the parent reviews, to look at the curriculum. And by the way, those books were at those parent reviews, all before sending it before the Board of Trustees to review. Our SHAC members and NEISD Board of Trustees will and still continue to work for our students and staff, for your students and staff. We continue to uphold current legislation, and again, we'll continue to go above and beyond. I give any remaining time back and want to thank each of you for your time.
Number 3.
Good evening, President Grona and board members. My name is Jennifer Easley, a parent of 2 NEISD grads and a current NEISD student. As mentioned, this curriculum is provided to students only when a parent opts in, and it is giving parents the choice as requested. Although abstinence is obviously preferred, we also have to confront reality. Teens are learning about sex from Google searches and social media, and they need information about making a decision to remain abstinent, as well as how to avoid pregnancy and remain safe and healthy. From what I've heard, the curriculum not having the words "don't have sex" does not imply the curriculum does not promote abstinence. It also seems to offer students option to avoid situations so that sex does not become an option. This grievance is circumventing the process laid out by our legislature for our SHAC and board to ultimately make the decision on sexual education curriculum.
My expectation is that the board would not necessarily get in the weeds on every topic, but would respect the research and opinions of the SHAC members that originally recommended the curriculum, and comprehensive sexuality education should not be political. The sticking points are known, and this is a challenging topic. Making everyone happy is impossible. There are so many issues to address for our students right now. This seems to be frivolous to spend our district's and its volunteers board's time on an issue that ultimately boils down to a parent's choice. If our goal in this is to preserve family values, a worthy goal, we may want to start by spending time at home with our families in the evenings rather than at board meetings, and trusting our NEISD leaders and volunteers to make decisions for our students while taking into account all of our students. Would we be better served by encouraging our families to be clear with their children about their own sexual values and attitudes, eat together, help their students with homework, model positive values, and support their schools and teachers rather than campaigning against our district over these topics? What I'm not hearing is what curriculum is truly better. My limited research did not reveal a perfect solution. I've heard many of the school districts around us use the same curriculum, and again, this is a challenging topic, and making everyone happy seems impossible. I agree that this is a SHAC matter at this point. Thank you.
Number 4.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for hearing us. As a SHAC member during that approval year for the material.
Please state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Karen Lenartz.
Thank you.
And I am a proud parent of NEISD graduates. As a member of the SHAC board during that approval year, I would never have approved material that would have harmed my children, my friends' children, or children of the district. I felt I did my diligence in reviewing the material during SHAC, and then again during parent meetings prior to my daughter starting that program. Not only did I attend those meetings, I attended the meeting that was at the library that was not NEISD, needed my own information, and asked to read those books again to be sure I was getting the correct information. I also feel I have a different background as some. I have a Jewish mother, raised Jewish and Catholic. I'm raising my children Catholic, and I feel that this curriculum serves in all those morals and hits every moral that I would like for my children to have. I am comfortable having my children study this material. And I am also honored to be in this district that has the opt-in program that my children can opt into this program, or I can opt my children into this program, I'm sorry. And I feel to receive this important information. Thank you.
Number 5.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to address you. My name is Katie Brown, and I'm a former NEISD parent. I had a child graduate in 2017, and my boys graduated in 2020 and 2021. I also was a parent representative on the SHAC, which I joined in the 2014-15 school year. I'd like to take a moment to tell you how I got on the SHAC. I was attending the volunteer orientation at Lopez, so I could be a volunteer at that school. At that meeting, they asked all the parents who were there and said they need more representation from the Reagan cluster on the SHAC. Is there anybody willing to go to the meetings and join the SHAC? And I raised my hand. That is as simple as how I got on the SHAC. The SHAC as an organization approved the Draw the Line, Respect the Line curriculum. A subcommittee of SHAC that included parent representatives along with district and community partners who had expertise in the subject reviewed the curriculum. They presented the curriculum to us and made a recommendation. The SHAC approved it, and then the SHAC approved it, which we did. This is how large groups operate. Committees are charged with a responsibility and bring their findings to the organization as a whole to vote on them. I'm also coming to you as a parent who had 2 middle schoolers at that time. I read the entire curriculum. It was focused on how to set limits, respect the limits of other students, and how to deal with pressure. As the lawyer said, refusal skills. As a parent who happens to be Catholic, I had no problem with my children receiving this education, And if I did, I could simply opt them not to participate. I strongly believe that public schools should not be teaching a particular religious belief. The role of public education is to meet the needs of a very diverse population of students. I would like to leave you with this quote from President Kennedy. Let us think of education as the means of developing our greatest abilities, because in each of us there is a private hope and dream which, fulfilled, can be translated into benefit for everyone and greater strength of the nation. Thank you.
Number 6.
Hi, I'm Terry Peace, and I have 3 kids in the district. I have a high schooler, a middle schooler, and an elementary student. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. Sorry, I don't like speaking in front of people. Over the past year, in this boardroom, we've heard a lot about parental rights and choice. So this weekend, when I saw a Facebook post about for a group of parents who are rallying to attend tonight's meeting to support a dad who wanted abstinence-only curriculum, I was surprised because as an NEISD parent, I know it's my choice for my child to participate in any sex ed lesson or not. If other families want to teach abstinence only, they can choose that for their family. So why are parents now advocating against having choice for other parents? Perhaps they only actually believe in parental choice when it benefits them. As a board, it is your elected duty to serve 60,000 students from diverse families. You have done that well. And as you know, sometimes the best decisions for the community align with your personal beliefs, and sometimes they don't. But as a board, your personal ideologies, political views, special interests, or culture wars should not and cannot drive the agenda. I urge you to consider how a public grievance causes divisiveness in our community. It serves no purpose other than to rile up a very loud minority, and it also distracts us from the work that needs to be done. Our students deserve better. Thank you.
Number 7.
Good evening, President Shannon, school board members, and administration. My name is Melinda Cox, and I'm an NEISD parent. I have 2 alumni and 1 current student. I've been a volunteer with the district for over 10 years. 6 of those have been with SHAC. I was there in 2016, and I'm still there today. I take my parent volunteer position with SHAC very seriously, as my only concern in that position is the education, welfare, and well-being of every single student. This curriculum in question was reviewed and recommended by SHAC 6 years ago and has been part of the middle school curriculum since then. We opted both of my boys in for the program, and both of them, today I spoke with both of them, and they both recall the program being about abstinence. This program is provided only if you opt in, and over 80% of students do so. Also, I would never be part of a council or group that did not take the curriculum process very seriously. I spent 10 years advocating for the safety of children and others. It would never recommend harm to a child. I believe most parents are comfortable with draw the line, but understand we don't all think the same way. So I'm grateful for the opt-in option, as it provides parents and students the choice they might prefer for this sensitive subject. Also, I have never been forced to sign anything during a SHAC meeting. And there is always a space for questions or objections, and there has always been a line of communication available for the community and parents. I have never used my SHAC position to influence members or non-members. Thank you.
Number 8.
Good evening, board members, President Groner, members of the board, and staff. Thank you for your service to the community. My name is Linda Como. I'm a resident of NEISD, stepmother to 2 graduates, and grandmother to 5 current NEISD students. Also have 41 years in this community. Sex education, it happens everywhere. But what type of sex education? As I was a little girl, I learned that sex was sinful. And little boys my age learned about sex education from magazines. According to leading research, 50% of teenagers have sexual intercourse before they have any formal sex education. And even though I had 10 years in Catholic schools and 70-plus years on this earth, I am very happy that we have a sex education program in NEISD. So what do I want as a parent, a grandparent, and a taxpayer? I think we can all agree on several things. We want to make sure that the parents in the district are involved and that we work together to have a curriculum that's providing an opt-in, or if the parents don't want that type of sexual program for their students, they can opt out. We want a program that meets the requirements of the Texas Education Code and the TEA. We want scientific facts taught by accredited teachers, certified teachers. We want religious, moral, and personal issues be directed back to the parents. We want a program that's proven to work, teaches abstinence, and shows students how to set and respect personal limits. I'm glad we have this program. Sex education is vital to adolescents' healthy sexual development, and young people have the right to information that is medically accurate and age-appropriate in order to make informed decisions. The NEISD program for human sexuality and abstinence education meets these needs and offers parents individual choice. I support this program and urge its continuation. Thank you.
9.
Hello, Bill Librera. I'm here to state that the primary educator of the children are the parents. What I've heard here today is what seems like a marginalization of the parents, especially the parent that was sitting right here. Are you a lawyer? I mean, it's just disgusting questions as like, are you a lawyer? What are your qualifications? The qualifications are, I'm a parent. And what I see going on is that this sex education program is de-emphasizing wholesome activity like abstinence. Oh, maybe if a kid brings it up, then it'll be in the program. But if a kid doesn't bring it up, then it's kind of in the program, but not really. We're not emphasizing abstinence, and even the word marriage isn't even used, if at all, okay? These are wholesome values. What I fear is this program, who some people think is good, is actually grooming our children and causing more harm. Why do I say grooming? You guys talk that critical race theory isn't taught in schools. Right, there's no course, right? And when we talk about social emotional learning, there's no course in social emotional learning, but you're sticking your nose into what I do as a parent, which is social emotional, and I teach my kid. I don't need you. If you have a problem with my kid, social or emotionally, then you come to me. I may go to a church, I might go to a trained psychologist, but I'm not going to the teacher to fix my kid. I want to know if there's a problem with my kid, but you're teaching groupthink with social emotional learning, and with the groupthink, tie it in with the sex education, and you're grooming kids. You might not know it now, but in the future you will. And if you will, go to a YouTube video, 2019 SEL conference, and they're telling you what they're going to do. It may not be in our schools now, but it may be in the future. Thank you.
10.
Hi, my name is Kim Martin Trujillo. I'm not on any committee or anything. I am a parent here at NEISD. I have a graduate and a junior at one of the high schools. I didn't really come prepared because I really wasn't sure what I was going to hear. The person who was speaking, Mrs. H., I'm not sure what your statistics were having to deal with minorities, and I'm Hispanic. My daughters are half black and half Mexican, and we are Catholic. I do appreciate the programs that are offered at NEISD, including the sexual education training. A lot of it does come from parents, what we teach. I almost had to laugh at the fact that you wanted the curriculum to say absolutely do not have sex. Seriously, that should come from a parent. I mean, from that to come from educators is almost mind-boggling to me, that you are up here wasting our time creating a grievance. Well, okay, that she has a grievance because that phrase was not used throughout the curriculum. So again, I'm offended that we are wasting our time here and our taxpayers' money for a grievance that doesn't honestly make any sense to me.
11.
Good evening, President Grona, board members, and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. My name is Angie Souter, and first I want to thank the board. Thank you for keeping the best interests of all children in mind when making decisions. I heard earlier that this is not a political issue and that politics don't belong in these decisions. However, I'm sitting here listening to everything tonight. It actually sounds very political to me. There has been mention of this community being predominantly Christian and or Catholic, and that this program should be a reflection of our values. Nobody speaks for me, and I am a Christian. And those comments are not a reflection of all community members. Those of us not in agreement have not fallen in our faith, as was stated. This is one person's grievance, not my or even everyone's issue. I'm part of this community. I have 3 children in NEISD schools, including one that's currently in middle school. This is a completely opt-in program. I'll repeat it. It's a totally opt-in program, and that's the bottom line. It has been noted that this curriculum meets legal requirements. If a parent isn't happy with what is being taught, they can choose not to have their child participate. I'm not sure how much more transparent all of you can be. Parents can attend a preview, and parents can not opt in. I'm asking you, please do not waste our tax dollars on this. To me, numbers don't lie. SHAC was comprised of, I think I heard 50 members who gave recommendations to adopt this program. And we heard from several of them tonight, and I trust in the families who participated, and they graciously gave their time to review it and thought it was best for our children. If I heard correctly, over 80% of families opt in currently. That is a majority. Thank you for your time.
12.
My name is Diana Guzman-Fenso. I'm also Mexican, and I'm a conservative. I believe in God, but I don't have a religious affiliation. But I do believe that I have parental rights. And personally, I feel like you guys are constantly violating my parental rights. You override my authority, and I don't want my tax dollars paying for sex ed. Why can't my tax dollars pay for something different, like maybe a course in government or learning the Constitution? Well, if sex ed is so important to certain parents, they can teach it at home. This is an education school district. It is not a health district, and I feel like the school district now, it's just has its hands all in the medical side of issues. That's not what you guys are for. I pulled my kids out of NEISD. I will never come back to public school. I feel like you guys are government driven. You put sex ed in the curriculum. You put cell in the curriculum. You put CRT. No, CRT is a stem of cell. But all this, you get money from the government to do all these things. It's not like y'all are personally saying, oh, I think this is good. No, you guys get money for doing this, and we all know it. So, the thing is, we're going to vote you all out. We have to change the school board makeup so that way we can get the parental rights restored to us. because you guys do not help us. You don't. You see one side, choice. You're talking about choice today. I was at every single school board meeting fighting for my kid not to be masked. And I wasn't saying, oh, you can't mask your kids. I want my kids to have the choice to be masked or not. And guess what? You didn't even listen. You didn't read any of the studies that were, it's already proven masks don't work per CDC, but you still see people running around with masks. So that tells me a lot. The school district sucks.
13.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Hyman. I wasn't preparing to talk tonight, but decided to when I arrived. I actually came here about 2.5 years ago when I first learned about the program, and I came here to speak in front of the board, and I know there's some new people. But at the time, I did express my grievance with the sex ed program, disapproval of many things, not just a faith-based reason, but I did read the outline, I read the student manual, and I read the instructor's manual, so I did know about the information. After my presentation, actually the president at the time actually laughed, had the audacity to laugh. My kids were in NEISD at the time. When this whole grievance process went through and I watched how they were attacking these parents who literally were just coming forward to say, hey, we have an issue, like here are some of the things. Instead, they've had to go down this huge rabbit hole, and it was awful to watch, and it was really quite sad. And I just want to state that, I can tell from the questioning that you guys drilled Miss H with, that you guys have already made your decision, and I already know which way this is going to go, but I do have to state that as a result of all this ugliness, I pulled my children from NEISD public schools, and they will not be going back until things change. And that was really, really sad because I'm pro-public school, but the response that we got from the board when I came to talk was just disgusting. And I want to also say for the opt-in situation, because a lot of people have addressed that, and I have reviewed the parent outline. What is in the parent outline is not a good representation of what is being discussed in the curriculum. It's not the same, period. I've reviewed both items, and it's disgusting. I also want to point on a item that was brought up about the females and how, this can be triggering to people who have experienced trauma or rape or any of the sexual assaults. And I think it was Marco and Tina is one of the scenarios that, by the way, females, the guys and girls have to also do this in front of each other. So they have to play these scenarios out in front of each other. And I think parents need to know that, right? So when this happens, a girl decides she doesn't want to have sex, so does the guy, and they decide they're at a party, they get drunk, right? And so they start doing different things with each other, and then they go to her room, so they're intoxicated, and then they starts filling them up, and then they end up having sex, and she regrets it. And they have to play out these scenarios in front of their peers. It's really quite disturbing. And there's many other scenarios. There's lists of different ways to have sex that are quite disturbing. But I just want to state that I'm really disappointed in what has happened here today and the attacks that happened on Miss H and the people that agree with them. So, thank you.
Number 14.
Hi, my name is Melissa Beckett, and I am the parent who did the presentation that triggered this grievance. I'm also the parent who did the grievance prior to this. And so I just would like to correct a few things. And actually, I left my phone over there. But so, Ms. Huey, you asked if I consulted any counsel or teacher. Yes, both of those. You could have just asked me, but the answer is yes. The TEA email that we keep talking about, and we keep saying that the TEA says that this is legal, and that's all I ever wanted to know was I need someone to look at this because this doesn't look right. This was never intended to be a process that lasted this long. And the TEA did not say that the curriculum complied. They did not say that there's no need to look at the curriculum. What they said when I asked specifically, was there an investigation, because their letter to me was unclear. They specifically said, although the TEA requested information from the school district, there has not been an investigation authorized and more information was not required. There was not an investigation. And I don't care who comes up here and tells you there is, if you continue to tell the school and the teachers and the parents that the TEA has blessed this, you are lying. And that should matter to you. But what seems to have mattered today wasn't whether or not the curriculum was legal. Matter of fact, most of your questions had nothing to do with that. All of them had to do with trying to set up Miss Paula in the way she answered a question. How on earth did all these people get here tonight? That's a violation of her rights and Mr. H's rights. Because you know what? The post that was put on the internet was say, please come support our friends. I was not planning to talk today until I saw this room full of people that I didn't know how they got here. Someone in this room violated their rights because there is no way they could have known this was about the shack. That was never posted anywhere. There is no way that they could have even thought about abstinence only because that wasn't in the Facebook post. So you need to look into how the HELL this happened because that is wrong. And it is an abuse of your power and it should never have happened. This is about the lawfulness of the curriculum, and these brave people have fought you, and we came here to support them because you're not actually listening. Listen to the grievance. They've explained the $100,000. Drop it. That isn't what this is about. From the very beginning, we just want it to be lawful. So she gave you a great out. Ask for an AG opinion. If you truly believe it's legal, it shouldn't scare you at all because it's just going to support you. But you know what? If you don't ask for it, you know what that tells me? Is you don't care about your parents and you don't actually care whether or not it's legal.
And that's all.
Okay, do I have any board members that have any questions for Mr. Lopez?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, then we are going to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071. The time of adjournment is 8:40.
Here, if you have a question.
This is not deliberation. This is consultation with board's attorney.
So after you ask the questions, you'll come here to deliberate because you can't deliberate
Yes.
in the closed session.
I just have a question. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you. Back on.
8:40. The board will now reconvene into open session and the time is 8:52. Does anyone on the board wish to make comments about the information presented this evening beyond what was discussed during the hearing?
I do have one comment, but that, when we read the letter from TEA, and I recognize there's different interpretation, but the interpretation that I have is that if it were necessary for an investigation to be made, it would have been made. Hang on, let me get the,
What page was that?
yes, I know, I'm sorry.
I have it marked. 245 is where it starts.
245? Almost there. Yes, here we go. Yes, the closure letter from the initial grievance, which is, this grievance is mirrored. And that they're both against, they're both stating that it violates 28004. But I just, if there were more information needed on their part, if they felt like there was an investigation that would need to happen, we would have heard that there was an investigation that needed to happen. This concludes the agency's review of the matter, and no further action of information is necessary at this time.
Right, so I think we have to assume that they closed the case.
Yes.
Because they did not feel like there was anything violating the law. And I think
Northeast Independent School District has addressed and reported concerns that are within the scope of the Texas Education Agency.
So while they did not do a formal investigation, there was nothing in the documents that led them to think they had to do an investigation, is the way I'm interpreting
That
this.
is how I am interpreting it.
So while previously there may have been some comments or verbiage stated that TEA investigated and didn't find anything, that the wording may not have been correct.
It's, again, an agency, and you're hoping that it can be, well, I guess anyone can interpret how they want to interpret, but that is how I see it, is that it is closed.
And that there would be no
Correct.
investigation.
Because
it says no further action or information is necessary.
I just find it very interesting that we would be able to teach a curriculum for 4 years. This was a letter that was written in 2018 that was violating 28.004, and that we would have not had any agency, whether it be TEA or school board, anybody coming to our door saying you are violating the law. You're violating the code. I find that really improbable.
Well, I think the other thing that, and I'm going to find it before I start speaking, is that the TEA is using this draw the line, respect the line for the HIV and AIDS prevention resources. Now, while it doesn't specifically say that it's for the human sexuality piece, I do not think TEA would recommend a program if it violated the law. So to me, that kind of provides further evidence or proof that they've obviously reviewed that curriculum if they're going to recommend it for this piece. So I would think that if it was violating the law, they wouldn't have recommended it even for that. I could be wrong, but.
That's the way I interpret it as well. If they felt that it was not appropriate for that, they would not have recommended for that, what you had just said. So and as a curriculum as in its entirety. So, which also is, why they're saying in this TEA letter that, no further action is necessary. No review of the matter, no further action is necessary at this time. Because if there would be, then we would have heard about it already.
Well, and if it's my understanding, the packet was submitted, all the information was submitted with the information as far as, that this person's opinion and of the curriculum. So they had all that information. Then we receive a letter that says, we have a complaint. We've received the attached complaint concerning Northeast Independent School District. Before TEA takes any action, they want to afford the district with an opportunity to address the complaints reported concern regarding the district's health education instruction not complying with its requirements, and to take any other action as deemed necessary. And so we responded, and with that response came the letter from TEA saying it's closed.
Okay. Anybody else have any other comments that they want to make?
I said I want to just clarify and for Mrs. H and Mr. Piricello, and I'm just going to read these directly from the level 1 grievance just to make sure we understand what the items are that we're discussing up here. And the first one is halt, draw the line, respect the line immediately, reinstate previous, I assume means human sexuality curriculum in the interim, B is require SHAC meetings to be open and members to speak to the public they are underlined supposed to be representing. And C, require board to review entire curriculum before replacing it with anything new to any ISD. Are those three things consistent with what we are to be reviewing?
Those are the three remedies in the level 1 complaint. Ms. H is stating that there's another remedy, so I'll let her speak to that.
Thank you. Yeah, that is correct for level 1. At level 2, it was a request to investigate.
Correct. Thank you for the clarification. And I guess as part of this, I mean, honestly, as we've discussed here tonight, some of these things the remedies have already occurred. So we're, I guess my question to my colleagues is, are we allowed to approve some certain things have been already addressed? Are we allowed to individually sort of look at these requests in the grievance so that because we are, like, number 3, we're legally now bound to review the curriculum regardless of what, and at the time, obviously, the grievance was filed that.
Yeah, so I think you can grant it. And I apologize because I'm looking at level 2 and I don't see where that.
There was a 4th bullet added and I'm trying to get to it.
Yeah,
That's
what
what I'm
page?
looking
'Cause
for.
I'm looking for that.
Sorry.
I see a level 2.
Just trying to get it teed up here. It is, yeah.
I think it's after the man left.
That's what I was looking for. Getting there, closer.
It's level 2 or level 3?
2.
Yeah, at level 2, in the response, this is page 91.
Oh, I'm almost there.
So it's not on the level 2
I
grievance
see.
But it's
form.
not on the level 3, though. It's not on level 3 on page 96. It's not there.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's only those 3 remedies.
Yeah.
So,
And then,
Oh, okay.
yeah, and then on level 4, it's not there.
so I think those are the 3 that we have to consider.
Okay.
Mr. Byer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was kind of, that was where my question was too, was the things to consider tonight. So we cannot consider anything that was not in these 3 things, right? We cannot add to. Would that be correct? I mean, because it would have to be posted and.
I think it has to be what was.
These 3 things, okay.
Okay.
That's my understanding. Can I ask Mr. Lopez?
Anything else that we would have, that we voted on tonight would have to be agendized in the future? I mean, we can only vote on these 3 things tonight.
Yeah, typically in a grievance, when it's before you, you would go by whatever the requested remedies are, and you can either vote on them as a group, or you can split them out individually and take action on each one of the specific remedies that has been requested. So
Okay,
it's
but what
up
about
to
the
y'all.
fact that at level 2, 1 was added, but it was not included in 3 or 4?
So, I mean, ultimately, it's, I guess, what would be live before you is what would have been requested that has made its way to you. So if there was something included at level 2, but it was not included at level 3 or 4, then that would suggest that that has been dropped by the grievance. So you're left with the 3
Because level 4
things.
is what what was.
Yeah, that's the
at our
live
level
complaint.
last time.
That's right. That's the live complaint. So
Okay,
it's
so-
whatever remedies would have made their way to you, and it sounds like at level 3, you have, I guess, whatever those 3 remedies.
Same 3, yeah.
Yeah, so that that's what would be live before you in the appeal as it got to level 4.
Okay, I'm trying to find level 4 just to see if,
Page
96.
96.
no, level 4 is 120.
Oh, that's level 3, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Okay, yeah. Well, it's.
Oh, okay.
It's right
yeah,
here.
at the very beginning.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Like page 11.
Tell me again what page?
Well, if you go to like page 11 in the summary.
Yeah, okay. So it's just those 3.
Yeah.
You're on page 96.
96 is level 3,
Page
yeah.
11.
11, oh.
Okay. So does anybody else have any other comments? So I do think, though, to answer your question, Mr. Byer, there can be remedies, not remedies, action
Actions,
Yeah.
for each remedy.
Well, and I think mainly just want to make sure, I keep going back to number 3, that I don't want to do anything that then is going to violate our, our charge from the education code by, if everything had to get lumped together. So that's why I wanted to try to clarify that.
Well, because basically 2 has been done because SHAC meetings are open.
Right.
And I don't know that I want to require SHAC members to speak to the public. I think that's up to the individual SHAC member if they want to have I don't know that that's under my authority or our authority as a board member to
require
But
that.
does that mean, that meeting's open to the public and members to speak to the public, they're supposed to represent, does that mean that it's the same setup that we have when public, we open up to public comment? Is that what that's asking for as well? Since that meeting is open to the public, is that remedy saying that there should be public comment during that meeting? Or does it mean what you're saying, that, if someone comes up to the individual SHAC member, should they not be allowed to speak or be allowed to speak to that particular person? My interpretation is that it could be both of those things, actually. But that's initially what I kind of thought it was requesting if it was an open meeting.
Okay.
But I don't know.
All right. Any other comments or questions?
One
not
last
questions, sorry.
No, not
Comments?
question. Comments. I think one last thing in trying to, look at. We've kind of talked about number 2 and 3 remedies. Looking at number 1, about halting the use of the curriculum immediately, and going through the efforts that Mrs. H has provided. The grievant, not Mrs. H. You're representing the grievant. The side-by-side comparison, and I want to say that, although I appreciate the effort going through that, I don't know that I can find compelling reason that we have absolutely violated the law, and so I think there's room for interpretation of some of these things when you get down to it. And I know there's the words that are must and shall, but I think there's additional language mixed into some of this that leaves some gray area, at least to me. And if I've got if I have staff, the SHAC, people that have gone through this curriculum, I was not on the SHAC at the time that this was approved, but in going through it myself, and anecdotally having children that have gone through this, who I've also spoken to, that have said, my teachers tell me abstinence is the best choice. I think there's a lot of room between all this that I don't know that it's an absolute black and white issue as far as what the code tells us and what we have in our curriculum. I think that I think we are aligned with what the intent and the spirit of the code 28.004 indicates. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, and the other thing we have to remember is a few months ago, we passed a resolution to have SHAC review the curriculum again. I mean, I know they're going through the health and the PE ones now. So I'm not exactly sure when that's going to be, but I think that at some point, they may or may not choose this one again. There may be something else.
Right, and we can't guarantee that, well, we can't guarantee anything, what's going to
No.
come back to us. Do we know what the timeline is for that at this point?
They didn't finish their first meeting. They had some technical difficulties in the beginning, and so they didn't get through their agenda.
Okay.
So they are reconvening at the next meeting
To finish.
the agenda
Approval
from last meeting.
process for-
Yeah, so it's still in the approval process.
Okay.
But I would say, assume, I don't know that that's right, but I would assume that once those curriculums get approved, then they would move on to the next charge, which is to look at. So I would anticipate maybe, I don't even know what month this is, March.
Have they convened the subcommittee for this already?
I don't know, and I don't know if we can ask that question.
Withdrawn.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, do I have a motion regarding the grievance?
Madam President, I move to deny remedy 1 of the grievance.
Okay. Do I have a second for that?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
I move to approve remedy 2 with the exception of requiring members to speak to the public other than in their role during the meeting if they are speaking in the general meeting itself.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
And lastly, I move to approve remedy number 3, requiring board members to review the entire curriculum before replacing it with anything new to NEISD.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Winkley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. So the grievance hearing is now concluded, and the time is 9:12. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.